Go to the live safari page and ask your question below the live feed.
Hello, boy. You are a monster. And he's coming right up to us. Hello, boy. Oh, settle down. Settle down. He is very, very close. He's pushing his trunk against the car. You can feel the car moving. Hey, 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 hey. Stop that.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth Daily. This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning and welcome to andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve, where we've got a beautiful herd of Impala. Look at all those little lambs playing in the morning light. And amongst their mothers, mums are all feeding, the youngsters are all playing in the cool of the morning. How exciting is this? What a way to start the morning. There's a whole bunch of Ngala, a whole bunch of Impala, and they're all busy feeding after the wonderful rain that we had last night. We're super excited to be out here this morning. Welcome to your very own live safari from the wilds of Africa. And once again, welcome to andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve, where we're still watching these little Impala lambs there's now a big ram that's moving in amongst them. It's almost like they're a little bit nervous of him. They're trying to walk away from him. Or it might just be that they're coming towards us, looking for some fresh grass to feed on. Have a look at the size of him compared to them. My name is Damon, and behind the camera we've got Owen this morning. And we're going to be heading out into a pretty similar area to where we were yesterday evening. The sky looks a bit clearer though, so hopefully we don't get rained on like we did yesterday. Rain is of course always welcome, but the camera doesn't like the rain very much, let's put it that way. Look at all these little Impala lambs, they're so cute. I can't believe how relaxed they are. They're coming right up towards us. And like I was saying, with it being early in the morning and pretty cool, shame they would have gotten very wet last night in the thunderstorm. And so they've been full of energy, they've been playing, chasing each other around. But I think now it's time to get down to the business of feeding. Their mothers are all doing that, and even some of the other lambs are doing it too. I can't believe how close they're coming to us. They're literally 5 meters from the front of the vehicle, everybody. Look how they keep shaking their legs out. Maybe a little bit stiff from lying down and sleeping. Or maybe a bit wet still. I don't know if you can hear in the background, there's I've lost their nerve a little bit, just moving off into the bush. There's a kind of like a rapid vibrating sound. It's going. I see the bird making the sound has just dived out of the sky and landed in the grass. It's a very small, well not very small, but a small brown bird called a flappet-lark that was making that noise. And that sound is made by the bird flying high up in the air and then kind of clapping its wings together. And that's its way of kind of announcing to other flappet-larks that this territory here is occupied. And there's a whole bunch of birds that are calling around us in the cool of the morning. There's quite a prominent call. Can you hear that? It's quite distant. It's a very pretty bird called a gorgeous bushshrike. That's busy calling. There we go. One of the little lambs has started to feed. Looks like it's feeding on a small thorn bush there. Oh, a little sickle bush that it's busy feeding on. And look at how they're all grooming themselves, turning their heads sideways, and then using those teeth to comb through their fur. Apparently lots of you remarking on how cute these little lambs are. I don't think I've ever had them come so close to the vehicle like that, and to get such a good look at them is just really special. Their big eyes and their big ears. But I think for me my favorite thing is those long lanky legs. Look at them. Oh, okay, this is quite interesting. So see on the right hand side of the road, and I suppose on the left hand side too, there's 2 adult Impala ewes, 2 adult female Impala. Have a look at one of the lambs compared to that adult female. And look at how long the lamb's legs are in relation to the adult's legs. Can you see how they're almost the same length? And so as a result, those little lambs' bellies are basically at the same height as their mothers. And just imagine, and now is the perfect illustration. Now look how we're having to look past the mother to see the lamb. And see how, because that little lamb's legs are so long, it would blend in quite well into the herd, and you can't really see it sticking out in between the legs of the adult female. And just imagine for a predator that's maybe stalking around the outside of the herd looking in, obviously with a little lamb being much smaller and much more vulnerable, that'll be the easier target for the predator, like a cheetah or like a leopard, to try and catch. But with those lambs' legs being so long, their bellies being up at the same height as their mothers, they kind of blend into the herd pretty well, make it harder for a predator to spot the little one. Look at how mum is busy grooming her lamb, and it looks like the lamb is reciprocating with a bit of grooming. Oh, mum looks like she's loving that. Getting to all the hard to reach spots behind mum's ears, behind her head, And now mom doing the same for her little baby. Bill, you're saying so sweet to see all the little young ones this morning. Absolutely, Bill. Very special time of year to see all these little Impala lambs. We've been seeing lots of little warthog piglets, and we've been seeing even a couple of little Wildebeest calves as well, all young that are seasonal, that are only born at certain times of year and that are all born at the same time. And like I was mentioning, that kind of survival. Oh, there's the flapper lark. It's flown up again. We're going to see if Owen can get it on camera. There's a big challenge for Owen first thing in the morning. Oh, he's got him. Look at that. So did you see how it was flying up? It's just dived down again into the grass. But did you see how it was flying up and then clapping its wings together, making that sound? And I'm hoping that that's a new bird species for those of you that are keeping WildEarth life lists. And if it is a new one for you, I'd love to know what number it is. What a lovely start to the morning. Let's head across to Tswalu quickly so that they can say good morning to you.
Good morning and welcome to Tswalu. We're currently at Tswalu Dam enjoying the view of the sunrise behind the Koranenberg Mountains. So our game plan for the day is to start following up on meerkats. My name is JP Leroux, and behind the camera we've got Davi. So from here we'll most likely, as soon as the sun starts coming over the Koranenberg and providing some heat, we'll be heading towards the burrow systems where the meerkats is located. From there, we also would like to try and see if we can locate on bat-eared fox and some Cape fox. At the moment, we once again found our little blacksmith lapwing that is living here close by to the dam. Most likely the same one that has the nest on the other side. And it's slowly busy pecking away at little insects on the water's edge. As we mentioned previously, this bird gets its name, blacksmith lapwing, from the ping-ping sound that it produces, which sounds like steel that's been forged on an anvil. Good morning, Patricia. You're 100% right. It is so peaceful at the moment over here. And especially with the water and the light that's shining up from the back of a mountain, it's very easy actually just to spend a few hours at a water hole like this and soak up all the tranquility. It's quite often also where you find most game by just simply patiently sitting and waiting for the animals to come to the water hole. Tony, yes, he's busy getting all the early worms, and I'm sure he's going to need all those little worms to feed to the little ones as soon as they start hatching from that nest. Also on the screen, we've got a helmeted guinea fowl, which is one of the two species of guinea fowls we have in South Africa. The other one is a species that's quite common in the Sunveld at Phinda. That's known as a crested guinea fowl. The helmeted guinea fowl that we have over here generally feeds on both grains, but also a large amount of ticks. Because it's so successful in feeding on ticks, it's often been exported into the United States and a number of other countries to deal with areas where there's a large amount of ticks and where Lyme's disease is quite common. So these birds work very effectively as a biological control agent. However, over here, we quite often use them as indicators of water, especially when they walk in a single file, and you'll often hear them calling all at once. When you know that there's a very good chance that they are actually going to lead you to water. Outside the breeding season, we normally see them in large groups. However, when it does come to the breeding season, these birds split up in groups of twos, and then from there, after mating has taken place, start forming a small little scrape on the ground where the eggs is laid. One of their strategies is to lay a large amount of eggs. Out of all of those eggs, only a few of the little guinea fowls will hatch. From here, we're going to start moving on to go and visit the burrow systems for the meerkats and see if we can locate on them. But in the meanwhile, we're handing you over to Phinda, where they're enjoying a sighting of an Impala.
You're back with us at andBeyond Phinda, and these Impala lambs have been running around chasing each other and playing. But again, they seem to have settled down, and some of the other antelope that we commonly see around here at andBeyond Phinda have come out. Some Ngala. See on the right that more orange coloured female with her white stripes down her body, and then a relatively young male behind her, that much darker grey, but also with those beautiful white stripes, and then of course his horns. Also moving around, trying to get as much food in as possible early in the morning while it's nice and cool. There's a lovely cool breeze that's blowing in from the southeast, bringing a bit of respite from the last couple of days that have been absolutely sweltering. Sorry, Owen, there's an Impala lamb that's suckling on the left here. Just to the right of that, I think it's a thorny karee. Look at that, everybody. There's a little lamb that's suckling. Look at its little tail is still swishing while it's suckling. And then those vigorous head movements, just like any other small herbivore, stimulating them, getting the milk to flow. Mom's had enough. Shaking her leg out, shame. But just imagine. I was saying to her little one, "Yo, you're being too rough. Calm down." And some more little lambs coming up. Look at that. Oh my goodness, look at that. Look what they're doing. Did you see how they were jumping and then almost kicking their back legs out behind them? Kind of like a... Look, you're still doing it. But don't do it behind the bush. Come on, come out into the open and show us your agility. So that behavior that we're doing now, do you see how they were, like I said, jumping up, kicking their back legs out, and they'll often kind of run around like that with that kind of rocking horse motion as they jump up and down. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen that before. It's a behavior that is referred to as stotting. And it's something that impala do, it's thought to show their fitness, it's a means for them to demonstrate their fitness. And they often do it when they're being chased by predators, especially predators like wild dogs, coursing predators that rely on stamina to run down their prey. And so they'll do that to show off to the predator, say, look, I can run away from you and still do this eccentric maneuver. That's how confident I am in my ability to escape you. So you shouldn't chase me. Don't chase me. I'm going to get away from you. I'm fit enough to escape you. It also looks quite fun, which is maybe why the little lambs are doing it. Just practicing those maneuvers and that behavior for later on in life, or maybe, who knows, maybe even later today, if they get chased by a predator and they need to escape. Of course, these impalas, for those of you that have been to the bush before, you've probably seen a lot of impalas. So if you're saying impressive impala gymnastics, speaking of impala gymnastics, look at the ram, he's now chasing one of the ewes. There he goes up along the hillside. Listen to the snorting. She's coming around again. Oh, she's going to go behind the car, but she'll come back on the left-hand side. Oh, never mind. Right past the vehicle. Still running. And the ram bellowing after her. So that's a behavior that we normally see during the rutting season with impala, which is kind of around April, May time of the year, where the males are competing with each other and trying to keep the herds of females within their territory so that they can mate with them when they come into estrus. But it's not unusual, though, even out of the breeding season like we are now, to see a ram every now and then chase ewes around, chase females around, to herd them, to try and keep them inside his territory. See how there's just the one ram in amongst all these females. So this is more than likely this male's patch, his territory that he defends against other males. And he'll have middens, just like with rhinos, piles of dung that he goes and defecates on every day. And the closer we get to the rutting season, the more vigorous his scent marking will be, the more vigorous his defense of his territory will be, and the more vigorous his chasing of females will be. But see there, he wasn't really running too fast. He was kind of just bounding along. His grunts were quite short, his bellows were quite soft. Ratch, you're asking at what age do baby impalas start growing their horns? Ratch, if you look carefully now, on some of these little youngsters, you might be able to see little bumps forming on their heads. And so it's pretty soon. It's within 1 or 2 months of them being born. I've seen little impala lambs already now. The first ones of which would have been born, or the first one that we saw here at andBeyond Phinda was the end of October, or kind of towards the end of October. And we've already seen a couple now with little bumps starting to form on their heads. I'm using my binoculars to see if I can see. There we go. Just to the right, Owen, of the ram, there's an impala lamb a little bit further back, and then just to the right of that one, there's another one that's facing kind of to the right and has its head down in the grass. It's very tough to see because they're very small. But it looks like it's just got 2 little black spots, or 2 little darker spots on the top of its head, right where the horns are going to start growing. And interesting to see already, there's a couple of lambs that are even practicing their sparring. They haven't got long enough horns to lock with each other yet to start fighting, but they're already starting to practice practice for later on in life, when as adult rams they'll have to fight for females during the rutting season. So yeah, probably around 2 months is when we start to see those little bumps forming on top of their heads. Ooh, apparently andBeyond and Ngala has found some predators for you this morning. So let's leave these Impala for now. I think Owen and I are also going to continue making our way a little bit further north from here to go see what else we can find for you. Let's go across to Ngala to see what they found.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to quite a glooming andBeyond Ngala, where we have found the 2 Ross males. So they've actually travelled quite a distance from where we had them yesterday. They were in the eastern parts of the reserve, and now we've just found them in the central parts. And they're already asleep. My name is Marna, and with me on camera is BK. So I'm going to quickly show you on the map how far they've travelled. So last night, for those of you that tuned in, we had them around this area here, and now they're around here. So as the crow flies, that's about 10 kilometers, but I'm sure they didn't go or come straight here. They probably did a few loops. So these guys have been busy. And the way we found them is they were actually roaring. And BK was the one that heard them first. So we switched the vehicle off, and yeah, then we found them right next to the road, which is quite lucky because we've had a lot of rain. They're starting to drizzle again now, but last night we had almost 30 millimeters of rain, which means today we're not allowed to really move off the roads. So this is a very lucky find. They're right next to the road. If you have a look at the one on the left there, you'll notice that his belly is very, very full. Now, we saw them yesterday, and he didn't look like this yesterday, so I'm sure he had a small meal. And it looks like he finished it by himself, because his brother, on the other hand, does not have a full belly. There you go, bit of movement. Hello, good morning. Oh, he looks grumpy. Well, he hasn't even looked at us. When we arrived, the other one lifted his head. But I think they roared and they were back down very quickly after that, because by the time we arrived, they were already flat. Maybe he's grumpy about this rain that's falling now. So for those of you that watched last night as well, I was chatting about the color difference with the manes. The one on the left there, he's got the darker mane. One on the right's got more of a blonde mane. And like I said, it seems to be the more dominant one, the one with the darker mane. And he's also the one that had the meal last night. So very interesting. This is a nice open area that we're in at the moment. So there's a lot of plains game. Before we found these lions, we saw a lot of impalas, zebras, wildebeest. Martha's asking if they have a place to hide when it's raining. Martha, if it rains really hard, then these lions will probably go under one of these shrubs. So you can see just behind them, there's a tree called a magic guarri, or a shrub called a magic guarri. And they'll probably just take cover under that. They'll find the thickest bush and just take cover there. But with saying that, I have been out here when it has rained very, very hard, looking for lions, because we knew they were around and we really wanted to find them, so we braved the rain. And yeah, found them out in the open, looking miserable. And there were trees and shrubs around them, and they just didn't take cover. So, I mean, like these guys now, it is starting to come down, and they're not moving. But but I'm sure they will soon. They've been moving a lot. And like I showed you, they've traveled quite a distance, and it looks like they're hunted as well, so I think they're quite tired. How beautiful is that? So nice to be with lions when they actually have their heads up, you know, when they're alert and doing something. They're not doing much, but at least they're looking around. So no sign of the rest of the pride, but that's not uncommon to see. We often find these males by themselves, just patrolling the territory, keeping intruders out, and then eventually they'll rejoin the pride again. One on the left's winking at us. Joyce is saying these two males look huge. Yeah, seeing them by themselves like this, they look very, very big. And they are. I mean, male lions will go up to 250 kilograms. I don't think these two are quite as heavy. I mentioned yesterday as well, they're not the big male lions I've ever seen, but I mean, they are they are big. They're big cats. And compared to the females, they are slightly bigger. And those manes make them look even bigger than they really are. And that is the function of the mane as well. So to intimidate other male lions, or other lions in general. And then also when these males fight, they often go for the head. And you can imagine that fluffy mane will act as cushioning for the head. I'm looking very happy. I don't know if you've gone to zoos, you've probably seen that lions in zoos have these, almost looks like perfectly groomed or manicured manes. And it's because they don't fight. You know, the guys, or the lions out here, they have to fight, so they often lose parts of the mane when they're in a battle with another male. All right, I think we're going to move on. The rain is starting to come down a little bit harder. We're going to send you off to a different location.
Good morning and welcome back to Tswalu. We just currently got to one of the places where we suspect that the meerkats have gone down, and meanwhile we're treating you to that little sunrise. So from here we're most likely going to start walking in to the site where they went down last night and see if they will start popping up. So at Tswalu we also have a number of people that specifically work on habituating a small group of meerkats for us. So what they will do is they will daily follow them, see where they go down in the evening, as well as where they come up in the morning. And then for most of the morning, they will follow them. So by simply associating with the meerkats, they get used to them. However, if we do leave them for more than 9 days, they often become wild again, and the whole habituation process must start from the beginning. What is very important about the habituation process is that we do not alter their natural behavior in any way. So therefore, there's no feeding of these animals to make them feel that they should be associating with us. From here, we're going to take a short walk, see if we can go and locate on our meerkats.
Welcome back to andBeyond Phinda. Owen and I have left those Impala and the Ngala as they moved away from the road. And like I said, we're heading north. We've come past the area where we saw those giraffe yesterday, and it was quite funny because Owen said it'd be quite nice to see a giraffe again this morning. And the words weren't even out of his mouth yet. And he spotted this giraffe. And have a look. I'm going to use my binoculars. You guys can use the zoom of the camera. Look on top of her head. See those thin horns that kind of taper in the middle and then get a bit wider towards the tops? And see how the tips are pointed and furry like a paintbrush. And that's how we can tell this is a female. Also, have a look at her mouth. See how she's busy chewing. But she hasn't reached down to any of the bushes, so she's ruminating. She's chewing the cud, just like a cow. And then swishing that long tail to swat the flies away. It's quite a picturesque scene, how she's going down the road. All those puddles from last night's rain. And ruminating over, it's time to start feeding again. She's moved off to a tree there. I can't quite see what it is from here with my binoculars, but she's starting to feed again. Look how I don't know if you can see how she's using that tongue, that long purpley black tongue, to gather up all the leaves, using it in conjunction with her big lips. To gather up food. And there were so many giraffe in this area yesterday. I'm sure there must be one or two more somewhere in the nearby vicinity. Remember earlier I was saying how there's a wind that's blowing from the southeast. And see how this giraffe has walked from the road to the right. So she's walking into the wind. She's walking kind of in an easterly or southeasterly direction, so walking into the wind and feeding into the wind. And some of you may have heard about how some trees... Ooh, what has she seen? See how her body language has changed, everybody? She's got her ears out to the side now. She's looking kind of in our direction, but a little bit down. It looks like she's looking down at the grass. So there must be something moving in there. She's cleaning her nostril with her tongue. Okay, well, whatever she saw is obviously not a threat. Might have been something small, like some francolins moving about in the grass. Well, it's obviously still of some interest because she's now looking back there again. But the fact that she's relaxed enough to feed tells us it isn't a threat to her. Priscilla, you're asking why most giraffes are solitary. Priscilla, in my experience, I found that giraffes are, well, often big males. They can be quite solitary, those old bulls. But generally speaking, Priscilla, at least here at andBeyond Phinda, giraffes actually move around in little groups. And they tend to move around in groups that are often referred to as temporary associations. So it's just as it is. It's groups that are only temporary. So it could be 5 together one day. It could be only 3 of them the next day. It could be 15 the next day. And they kind of just move in response to the availability of food and water as well to a certain extent. But for them, of course, there's safety in numbers. Having more eyes and ears and nostrils to keep a lookout for danger is obviously very important to them. But Priscilla, there's another interesting thing that I've heard recently from a colleague of mine who spent some time with some giraffe researchers up in East Africa. And he was telling me that apparently the researchers found that giraffes different to like lions, like the lions that you've been seeing up at andBeyond and Ngala, and the meerkats that you're going to go and look for over at Tswalu, that normally form groups with family members. Giraffes, at least according to the study, seem to prefer friends over family, which I thought was quite interesting. But like I said, it's not always the same couple that are together. And Priscilla, it may be that she is alone for now. I suppose a female that's about to give birth, she'd go off by herself to have her little one. And then, like I was saying, I've often seen old males by themselves too. But not to say that they won't join up again with females or bands of younger males sporadically, especially around good food sources. Okay, well there goes my story about her moving into the wind, because she's now going kind of perpendicular to the wind, heading along the road. And have a look at how thick the bush is on both sides of the road there. Very, very, very dense. And with her having that long neck, of course, it's obviously fantastic from a point of view of being able to scan into the distance to look for predators and other giraffes. Oh, look how she's scratching her face on that stick there. Shame. She's closing her eye. Gotta be careful you don't poke an eye out with those very sharp branches. But as I was saying, the long neck being fantastic to help her scan for danger, but in very thick bush, it can almost be a bit of a disadvantage because her head is so high above the thicket that she can't see what's underneath the thicket. Whereas for something like an Impala or an Ngala being lower to the ground, they can look underneath the bushes a bit better to see if there's, or they'd be better able to detect the movement of maybe a leopard or a lion or something lying in ambush there. Whereas for the giraffe, even with her fantastic eyesight, she might miss that. And so I've often noticed that giraffe tend to kind of steer clear of very, very, very dense areas, which is quite strange because you think, I mean, they feed on leaves and feed on branches, or feed on leaves, on trees, that they'd spend more time in areas where their food is abundant. But I've often noticed that they tend to feed on the edges of thickets rather than going deep into the thicket, where they would A, be less likely to be able to spot danger, and B, be hampered in terms of their mobility, in terms of being able to escape. And that reminds me of a story. I remember, I think it was about a year and a half ago, we were driving a group of guests, and we'd had a lovely morning. We were on our way back to the lodge, and we came across this enormous male giraffe standing next to the road. He was maybe about 15 meters off the road on the left-hand side, and he was busy feeding on the tops of a balloon thorn thicket, which is a very dense, thick bush full of horrible thorns. And to give you an idea of, I think I've shown them to you before, but to give you an idea of how vicious these thorns are, the Zulu people call the balloon thorn Ibamba Impala, which means to catch an impala, because those thorns are so vicious and so hooked. And there's so many of them in the bush that if an impala jumps into the bush, it will get caught and it will be stuck tight in that bush. And so this giraffe was feeding there, and it was feeding in a kind of a channel between the two bushes where there was space. And it was standing there on the left-hand side of the vehicle, and we were watching him, and it was wonderful to see him feeding. And on the other side of him, we didn't notice there was a herd of impala a bit further in, and then a herd of wildebeest between the impala and the giraffe. And suddenly something panicked the impala. I don't know what it was. It might have been a leopard that tried to attack them, but the impala panicked. They started snorting, and they all came running down this channel of balloon thorns straight towards the wildebeest. The wildebeest just saw impala running and snort, or had heard them snorting, and so they panicked and also ran towards us. And the giraffe just saw all of these wildebeest and impala come like stampeding towards it, so he thought he'd better run too. But of course, we had inadvertently blocked the channel, and so there was only one way for him to go, because he couldn't go back down the stream of wildebeest and impala towards the danger. And so he came running towards us, and there was literally nowhere for him to go. And he came, I thought that he was going to run and jump over the car. And shame, the tracker that I was working with, his name is Muzi, and he obviously sits up on the tracker seat in the front there. And he had been sitting with his legs off to the side, and this giraffe came straight to us, and I thought that he was going to trample us. So I stood up and I started waving my arms and shouting at him. And the giraffe, luckily, at the last second, he kind of sidestepped. He stood right next to the vehicle, and then he pushed off sideways and went past the front of the vehicle. And shame, Muzi had to rip his legs around. Luckily, he had some pretty good core strength. Ripped his legs around, legs landed up on the bonnet of the vehicle, on the hood of the vehicle, and the giraffe brushed past and then ran down the road. I was convinced the giraffe touched the vehicle. Muzi said it didn't, but it was that close. So, yeah, better not for a giraffe. I mean, like I was saying, a giraffe can be quite nervous when moving around in slightly thicker bush like that. That giraffe seems to have moved off a little bit down the road there. I'm gonna see if we can try and get a slightly better view of it. We'll keep on heading down the road here, but just before I do that, I don't know if you can hear. There's some rain frogs calling. And I don't know if you hear that very high pitched beep, 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 beep. It's quite faint, but here at andBeyond Phinda, and I think that Ross has managed to show you one before. We get a very special kind of rain frog here that is, as far as we know, known only from this reserve, and it's called a Phinda rain frog. It was discovered here at andBeyond Phinda a couple of years ago by our specialist guide, and I've been talking to Owen about this frog since yesterday afternoon, because it would be really phenomenal to get to show you one on drive. And I actually spent yesterday pottering around in the thick grass trying to find one. I would hear it calling, and then I would go to where it was and try to see it, and as soon as I got anywhere near it would be quiet. So didn't have any luck, but we've been seeing lots of termite alates that have been flying out. There's a little bird that's just landed on the bush in front of us, thereon. Lots of termite alates that have been flying up out of the ground. The little bird has moved.
I think he's just being still.
Oh no, there he goes. It looks like a yellow-fronted canary, a male. Very bright yellow front, yellow eyebrows, lots of yellow on the chest and on the throat. But I was just saying to Owen yesterday that our best bet, our best chance at finding one of these rain frogs would be to try and find a termite alate eruption where there's lots of termite alates coming out the ground. And last night we had an explosion of them because of the rain. There were so many of them. We even had a good laugh. We were sitting in the staff canteen having dinner, and there were just termite alates everywhere. There were toads, and even diurnal skinks were coming out in the dark and feeding on these alates. So they were all over the place. And I've seen a couple of little emergences, especially in these kind of more rocky areas where we've been driving this morning. So we're going to keep a careful lookout. If I find a termite alate eruption, we're definitely going to stop and maybe spend a bit of time there to see if a Phinda rain frog doesn't get attracted to the commotion. It looks like there's a warthog that's also just come out. Oh, a family of warthogs that have come out and started to feed around that puddle there. Let's take a slow drive down the road, see if we can't get a slightly better view of those warthogs, or maybe catch up with a giraffe. The road's a bit bumpy here, everybody, so please hold on tight. We'll just take it nice and slow so we don't get thrown out the vehicle. Oh, the bird up on the tree there, Owen. There's another bird up on the left here that's just landed in this dead tree. Saying there was a big group of barn swallows that had landed in this little dead, looks like it might be a dead wattle, but there's now a rattling testicular that is sitting up in the tree there. Quite a nice view of it, sitting out in the sun. Imagine for a little bird like that in the cold rain of last night and the big storm, and the kind of battering that it must have taken with the wind blowing it all over the place. It would have no doubt been tucked away in a thick bush, trying to keep to cover. I would have had to use all of its grip strength in those little feet to stay anchored to its perch. No doubt would have gotten absolutely sopping wet, but now that the sun is coming out, sure, it's a big relief for that little testicular. There we go, starting to call. A bird that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, especially those of you who've been watching WildEarth for quite some time. Quite a common bird in the low veld of South Africa and kind of mainly the eastern half of South Africa, in the bush veld. And that call, very distinctive, but also it can be quite difficult for people new to the bush to discern. Inga, you're asking me if it's a male or a female. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to get out my Roberts or my bird book quickly just to see if I can see if there is a way to discern between male and female. As far as I know, they do look alike. The fact that it's calling, though, might suggest that it is a male. Just stand by for one moment. Let me just have a quick look. So far, it doesn't say, or at least the book doesn't say that there's a difference between male and female. But hear them calling. Obviously quite territorial, and them all calling just like that flappet lark from this morning, letting all the other rattling cisticulars in the area know that this territory is occupied. Apparently the male is slightly bigger than the female, but I suppose you'd have to see them next to each other. So I need to see the two of them together to determine whether or not it's a male or a female. Their plumage is alike. It's that same kind of brown with a bit of reddish brown on the back. On the top there? Yeah, I think it's the same one that just flew across there. There's a, please land on a prominent perch. There's a beautiful bird that has just, he could have landed so many times and he flew away. There's a golden-breasted bunting that just flew past. Okay, let's keep on making our way down the road. So just as I was saying, there was a big flock of barn swallows that had been roosting up on this dead wattle, but they seem to have taken off and moved off. Let's keep making our way down the road. See if we can find where those warthogs went off. Owen and I were just chatting this morning, saying how lovely it is. I mean, the rain, lovely for many reasons. But one of my favorite, here's the giraffe. Oh, this is a different giraffe. And it's, wait, hang on, Owen, I'm just going to go forward. There's some zebra on the left-hand side of the road, a giraffe on the right, and some warthogs in front. So, yeah, lots of animal life around here. Lena, you're asking me what my favorite bird is. Lena, that is a lot of birds that I love, and I kind of go in phases, but I think my all-time favorite bird, Lena, must be a Verreaux's eagle owl. They are just the most incredible birds of prey. Massive talons, and they're kind of the silent assassins of the night, the terror of the night, if you will. Their size and their powerful talons and their silence as well in terms of hunting. They take an amazing array of prey, Lena, and that's one of the reasons, I know it sounds quite grim, but that's one of the reasons why I like them so much. They've been known to hunt everything from hares to other owls that are almost the same size as them. Secretary birds, I think, have been recorded killing secretary birds, which are quite a bit bigger than they are. I don't know if you were watching a couple of months ago. We filmed one with a thick-tailed bush baby that it had killed and was busy eating. Well, it wasn't busy eating. It was just sitting there with its kill and its talons. And we waited for quite some time, hoping that we get to see it eating, but it never did. They're also very pretty with those like pink eyelids. I'm going to put it up in the bird book so that I can show it to you, for those of you that have never seen one before. Pink eyelids and then the black sideburns down the side of their face. Also love their call, and they always remind me of growing up, going to the bush with my family, the area where we used to go every year on kind of an annual pilgrimage, if you will, with my late grandmother and late grandfather. And we'd always go there every year, same time of year. And the Verreaux's eagle owl was quite a, I want to say a common bird, but we had good success with finding them in the dry riverbeds of that area, and it was always a challenge to try and find one. And then we'd spend a good amount of time watching them. We used to hear them calling around camp quite often too. They make a very low, deep grunting sound, and then especially the chicks also make this high-pitched kind of sound. It wasn't a very good imitation, but it's something like that. And then their normal call is this deep grunting. Those of you that have heard the sound before, you can critique me on my accuracy there with the call imitation. But yeah, that's why they're my favorite bird. And for those of you that haven't seen one, here's a picture of it. So there it is there. There's those black sideburns on the side of the face, almost like Neil Young sideburns, there's those very pink, striking pink eyelids and very dark eyes. And then just beautiful plumage, the grey along the wings with that white. Those little ear tufts. Look at the size of those talons as well. Apparently, I was looking in one of my tracks and signs books. Those talons, apparently, if you measure the size of the track on the ground, it's apparently not that much smaller in terms of length than the paw of a male lion. So that's an idea for how big those talons are. There's my hand. They're probably about that long, somewhere around there, or the track at least is about that long. Yeah, incredibly powerful birds. I've actually watched one that was presumably trying to hunt fish. We were sitting on a bridge over a river late one night, and there was a dried up. It was also in winter time, and there was a dried up pool, and there were all these tilapia that were stuck in this tiny little pool swirling around. In the daytime there'd been storks and herons and all kinds of fish-eating birds that were trying to catch these little fish, and then we found this eagle owl sitting watching the water very intently, staring and waiting. We never got to see it swoop down and try to catch a fish, but it was staring there, so maybe it tried a bit later. Look at the zebra and how they've suddenly perked up their ears. Oh, sorry. A lovely little burst of activity though. Lovely to see the zebras, the giraffe, the warthogs and a couple of birds. Owen and I are going to continue heading north, and we're going to see what else we can find for you this morning.
How insane is that animal?
This is out of this world. Fantastic. Good, Mama.
Wow, what a way to start off.
It's just such an incredible privilege to be out here. It just keeps on delivering.
There you go, there you go. Heart is pumping right now.
3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Look at this, everybody. We've got a live kill.
The cock's holding the tail. It's holding tight. Lucky wildebeest.
There's nowhere to go. This is a disaster in the making.
Something that I have never seen before in my entire life that you are now watching live.
My heart is in my mouth, everybody.
Look at this. It's gonna make it. It's going, it's going.
This is just too magical. Hi, little guys. That's great, isn't it? Look at that. Scuba Steve has got a friend.
You've got a friend in me.
It couldn't be a better morning. This is just too special.
Oh my
goodness, we've got a turtle.
How epic is the fact that we're coming to you live from the Chobe River?
It's the most incredible feeling to be here. This is live, and we're in Rwanda. This is a very, very different adventure, charged with emotion.
I did not think I would ever face my fears like this.
Good morning and welcome back again to Tswalu. After 2 days of unsuccessfully trying to attempt to find the meerkats, we've eventually located them. And one of the burrow systems which that's only the dominant female within this group that actually breeds. There's also one sub-adult member to this group and 5 little ones, which we're hoping to see very soon. So generally what we find in the early mornings is that meerkats will rise just as the sun comes out and then stand in the sun for quite a while, heating up their bodies before that they become active. We sometimes also find that they tend to also conserve energy by remaining underneath the burrows when we have extremely cold winter weather and might not go out the burrow at all. So this is a dominant female that we have right over here. There's another individual that's just popped out behind the bush. Hopefully they'll come and join her. So normally when you watch meerkats, you can also see that they're very, very alert. Generally also when they're feeding, one of them will be taking a break from feeding, position themselves up somewhere in a bush and keeping an eye on potential threats. One of the adaptations that they have also to allow them to spot potentially dangerous birds is with the eyes where they can actually look directly into the sun without having to squint. I find it also incredibly interesting that these little guys can also differentiate between, this is a khosas. So just coming back to the meerkats. So this little group is known as the khosas. I know that most of you have been following the rock stars. However, we have not been able to locate them over the last few days. As mentioned on the previous episode, they quite often will go down in a burrow system late in the evening. But if there's a potential predator that has been detected, then we'll move off. And for a reason that we've not been able to find them, although they've been followed right throughout the day. So just to come back to one of the adaptations that they have with the eyes, and that they can directly look into the sun, is that they can also spot potentially dangerous birds like eagles that might try and catch them. So what we normally find with most birds of prey is that they will often use the sun from behind when they would like to attack on a prey animal. These guys also have a further ability to differentiate between birds of prey and storks of equal size, knowing that the stork has poses no threat to them. One of the local names for meerkats in this area is called stokstertjies. So quite often when they do run, they will keep their tails in an upright position, which acts as a visual communication cue that they can maintain contact with one another. So stokstertjie just literally translates into stick-tail. There's another name that also gets used for them, which is an atman, which means earthman, because of their lifestyle of living underground at night time and then coming up during the daytime.
We've got a view there.
Good morning, Daniel. Just to answer that, we actually don't know where they are at the moment, but yes, they are in close vicinity, and they generally have territories between 1 and 2 square kilometers, which they will maintain. However, these groups don't really like to interact with one another, and quite often you'll see them on their boundary lines, but they might aggressively react towards one another. And sometimes the larger groups will fight with the smaller groups and then enter the territory of the other group.
You just tell them I'm going to move the camera.
We're just going to quickly move our camera. The meerkats have all just moved slightly to the northern side of this burrow system, where there's another little meerkat head popping its head out. So when we are working with meerkats, we tend to sit rather than to stand. We're also very cautious about how we move because of our shadows. If we create incredibly long shadows which cast directly on top of them, they often feel slightly intimidated by our presence. I'm just going to move slowly away from them and then reposition myself and assist Davy with the cameras. Two of the horses are now out, and I can hear some little voices in one of the burrow system also making appearance. They're just hiding out of sight. Just give them a little bit more time, and hopefully we're lucky to see those little 5 pups as well. So generally when we look at meerkats, and we look at the females specifically, the dominant ones in the group, or dominant female in the group, will deliberately suppress and almost, how can you say, manipulate or bully the younger or less dominant females within a group to prevent them from going into estrus by keeping the morale quite low. So the reason why they do this is that they would like to ensure that all resources in terms of food and energy where other individuals are assisting with feeding goes straight towards her young, and that there's a better chance for her young to be raised. We also see this as a behavior with African wild dog and a number of other animal and bird species, which are cooperative breeders. So quite often when it does come to feeding, you'll see that the whole group assist the little ones with feeding, and quite often these little meerkats will all move towards one of the adults that does have food with them. Good morning, Roger. To answer your question, are they able to dig if there's grass? Yes, they can still dig when there is grass, and they will also quite often dig at the base of plants, especially certain plant species where we associate woolly chafers with, which is a species of beetle that they quite often like. And then also when they dig for scorpions, they will also start sometimes digging at the base of plants and grass tufts, and then from there, sometimes as deep as 50 centimeters, I've seen them digging after scorpions. It's amazing to see how much soil they can excavate in a very, very short period of time. Davi, can you maybe just focus on to their feet, that we can maybe see their nails? So, okay. So So hopefully if they do change from position and we'll be able to zoom in onto them, you'll be able to see the very large front nails, which is specifically adapted for digging. Good morning, Safari fan. They basically stand on their whole foot, and then what they also will do is they will use their tail to prop them in an upright position. It's actually quite funny to watch them in the heat of the day when they're in this upright position and they start becoming tired of all the heat. It's almost like if they start swaying then, sometimes almost to the point that they'll want to fall over. Oh, there's a third little face that's just joined us. Good morning, Ilse. To answer your question with regards to matriarchy, if we look at the social structure, it's a dominant male and a dominant female that will be the sole breeders within that group. Then, as mentioned earlier, the dominant female will dominate as well as sort of bully that lesser dominant females or alpha or beta females to prevent them from going into a reproductive condition. But when it comes to dwarf mongoose, yes, then we do have some form of matriarchy on that side, again, where the female tends to be the more dominant of a species. Quite often when we do look at meerkats, a lot of people forget that there are actually mongooses. And out of all the mongoose species that we have in South Africa, there's only 4 of the mongoose species which is actually day-active species which are social. And all 4 of those social species are day-active. And these include the banded mongoose, which we often find in the eastern half of South Africa and the northern parts of South Africa. And then meerkats, as we have over here, and the dwarf mongooses that we've been seeing on show, especially with the interesting interaction that Lauren had with the plated lizards and the dwarf mongoose the other day, and that comes to mind now. And then the last social species of mongoose is a yellow mongoose. However, we see them mostly feeding on their own. They also have small little groups which they return to at night time. There's just one of the pups rising up now. A second pup sticking out its head. We're going to spend a little bit more time with these meerkats, see what happens, and hopefully we can follow them for a short distance while they forage. But in the meanwhile, we're going to hand you over to Phinda, where they're enjoying a Wildebeest.
Welcome back to andBeyond Phinda, where the wind has picked up just a little bit. Owen and I have entered one of the clearings that we're going to be searching through this morning. And the very first thing that we found, we spotted it from quite a distance away, is this beautiful big Wildebeest bull. Busy resting in the open clearing. It also looks like he is chewing. So just like that giraffe from earlier, he's busy ruminating because he's chewing the cud. And at this time of year, here in Maputo land, the sun rises pretty early. Just before 5 o'clock already, it's quite light. And so he's no doubt already been feeding quite a bit this morning on all the lovely lush grass, the short grass that's growing around in these clearings. And because of the abundance of food, he's been afforded the opportunity to take a bit of a rest. Lie down, chew the cud, conserve some energy. But still having to be vigilant, of course. It's still nice and cool, still quite early in the morning, so there could be predators still on the move, predators like lions. There was that lioness that we saw last night, and she was heading in this direction. I haven't seen any tracks of her so far this morning. So look at how he is kind of scanning around, looking from left to right, sitting with his back to the wind. But of course, any scent behind him will no doubt carry down the wind and into his nostrils. Just having a look through my binoculars, looking at his lovely, glistening, glossy coat, and his big horns. He's a big bull and he's in his prime. Big horns. And the fact that he's all alone here in the middle of this clearing tells us that he is the dominant male here, the territorial bull. And just like that Impala ram that we saw earlier, he'll defend this territory against other wildebeest bulls, and when it comes time to mate, or it comes time to start competing for females, he'll want to keep other males out of his patch and keep females in his territory. So he'll be hoping that there's good food in his little clearing, good water availability. There certainly is now, so for his sake, let's hope that it stays like that until later, or until next year. But for me, the thing that I wanted to show you Simon, before I get into that, you've asked a very interesting question, and I'm going to use my mammal book to answer it for you because there's some nice pictures in here. You asked the difference between a blue wildebeest and a black wildebeest. So firstly, Simon, there's quite a size difference between the two, and if you wouldn't mind just coming and having a look here. So the blue wildebeest is a little bit bigger, but have a look there. There's a blue wildebeest. See the horns that come out to the side like that, a bit like a buffalo's horns, and there's that black forehead of the male, very big stocky body, bit of a black mane down his back, a black tail, and these kind of suede stripes that run down its body in the right light. In terms of actual size, they say for a male about up to 250 kilograms, a female normally about 180. See where the blue wildebeest is found as well? Mainly in the bushveld and the savanna areas of southern Africa, at least this particular subspecies. Compared to the black wildebeest, see it there? Looks quite different. See how the horns kind of curve forwards as opposed to off to the side? It's got a white tail and then a kind of like a two-tone mohawk of a mane that stands up on its back. This big kind of black, almost like a male lion's mane in between his front legs over there. And look at this picture here. See how it's in grassland. They tend to be animals that are found only in the open grasslands of the high altitude, the plateau in the middle of South Africa. And in terms of their distribution, I mean, look at that. Pretty endemic. Only found in the internal or the inland, the high-veld grasslands of South Africa. Maybe into Lesotho a little bit, maybe into Swaziland a little bit. But yeah, much more restricted distribution. And quite a bit smaller. The male black wildebeest only gets about the same size as the female blue wildebeest, only about 180 kilograms. But yeah, both very similar antelope in terms of their habits, often living in big herds or moving around in big groups. But I was just going to say, have a look through your binoculars, everybody, or rather use the zoom of the camera, and look at the face of this blue wildebeest. So another handy little difference. I mentioned the black forehead in the book now. See how this wildebeest also has a black forehead? There's a bit of red sand on it, which I'm going to get to now. But that black forehead, that is a telltale sign. If you're not 100% sure if it's a male or a female wildebeest, a blue wildebeest, a big mature male like this will have a black forehead, whereas females and youngsters have got more of a reddish, orange, brown colored forehead. But back to the sand and the mud that's on the nose and the forehead on the face of this blue wildebeest. This is where he's been, or his one of his means of scent marking. So I mentioned that the Impala ram, that he would have a midden of dung where he came to defecate. This blue wildebeest has the same thing. He's got a couple of piles of dung that he'll defecate on, just to keep his scent in the area, to advertise his presence. He's also got glands that might be quite tough to see now because of the fact that his face is covered in sand, and he's looking straight towards us. But just in front of his eyes, he's got little slits on the side of his nose, little glands that he'll also use. He'll rub them against trees and against the ground and give off the scent that also advertises his presence. And that kind of behavior, rubbing his face in the ground, often results in their faces getting covered in sand and mud, like this one. So with the rain last night, shame, his little patch where he goes and scent marks is obviously quite muddy, and as a result he's now got all this mud on his face. Excuse me. Kendra, you're asking a very interesting question. You're asking if wildebeest are antelope, and I suppose they're quite strange looking, hey Kendra? They've got horns like a buffalo, a long face like a horse, a tail like a horse, and then the body of an antelope. So there's an old fable that goes that the wildebeest was built up out of all the leftover parts of all the other animals when all the animals on Earth were created. And I suppose it does look like that. But Kendra, yes, they are a member of the antelope. They are an antelope. Well done. There's a bird off to my right, everybody, that's been calling quite incessantly. There it is now, that chit 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 chit. And I just caught a glimpse of it now. Oh, and it's in the top of the tree here. And we're going to see if we can try and get it on camera for you. So it's not that... Maybe can you see hopping around there. There it flies. It's now in this white-stemmed guarri in front of us here. And there it goes. There's still one there. Have you got it there? It's called a yellow-throated petronia. Very much like a sparrow. I'm just trying to find it with my binoculars to see if I can see it again. I'm not seeing it anymore. I think it has... Oh yeah, it's gone further back. Darn it. Let me get the bird book out so I can show it to you. You can see what it looks like. As I said, a yellow-throated petronia, very similar to a sparrow. And like the name suggests, it's got a lovely little yellow patch on its throat. That's not always easy to see. And so it can be quite... You can still hear it calling, it's taunting us. It's flown across the clearing. Page 486. There it is there. So there is the yellow-throated petronia. They've made the yellow throat in this book quite prominent, but it's not always so easy to see. But that white, very prominent white eyebrow, that's one of the distinguishing features, and that call, quite distinctive. Otherwise, there's quite a few other sparrows that it could be confused with, especially a female Cape sparrow where their ranges overlap. So you can see there the female Cape sparrow, quite similar looking. Over there. And I suppose even a female house sparrow, there's a slight resemblance there. One of the many instances where knowing bird calls comes in handy. Oh, and just as we started speaking about birds, I mentioned those barn swallows earlier. Look at how they're now starting to fly low down over the ground here. Now that the sun is heating up a little bit and the wind has come up a little bit. I mentioned earlier the termite alates that would be erupting out of the ground, heading off on their nuptial flights, going off in search of mates to go and start new colonies, new termite colonies. Oh, there's a yellow-billed kite flying overhead too. Amazing what the wind has done. That wind and a little bit of movement of air, and suddenly there's all kinds of birds flying around. Birds that hunt on the wing, can use the wind to their advantage to conserve energy. See how that yellow-billed kite isn't flapping its wings? It's just kind of having to angle its wings every now and then as it flies. Every now and then there's a flap to stop a stall, letting the wind do all the work and carry its weight. Apparently everybody's saying it's so majestic. A very majestic bird. It's, I suppose, not the biggest of the birds of prey, and certainly not, I suppose, the most elegant in terms of what it feeds on. Often feeds on carrion like a vulture, on just about anything really, termite alates as well. But that bouncy kind of buoyant flight is very elegant. And just like the barn swallows that have been flying around, it's a migratory bird, a bird that's arrived back in southern Africa quite some time ago already, but different to the swallow, which has come from Europe and Asia, and has come down here just to feed, not to breed, or at least the barn swallow. That kite has come from further north in Africa, and it's down here to breed. And of course also take advantage of the abundance of food that's down here at the moment. Now heading way off into the distance. Still flying quite low though. See how it kind of flies? It flies quite low at the ground, and it gains a bit of altitude and then comes back down. Cool, but it's now very, very far away. Lovely, a nice little stop. Lovely to see this Wildebeest. And then, unfortunately, we didn't quite get that Petronia as nicely as it was when it was sitting out in the open calling. But let's keep on moving through these clearings, see what else we can find. Let's go across to Pridelands in the meantime, so that they can say good morning.
Good morning, everyone. We have found a herd of buffalo that are enjoying this really cool and wet weather this morning. It's actually a spectacular morning. Hopefully it doesn't rain any more than it already has. We're on our way to go and check out Leopard Dam, which we think might be overflowing. Hi everyone, my name's Mike Anderson. Behind the camera is Seb, and you've joined us at Ecotraining's Pridelands Conservancy. After a really thundery, wet night, we want to see what's happening today on the reserve, and we found this herd of buffalo, which look like they've just come from the area of Leopard Dam, and they are starting to rest. There was some ruminating. In fact, I think you can still see one ruminating right now, right in the middle of the screen there. They've gotten enough food. They are just relaxing. There's nice wet grass all around them. It's been a wet couple of days, and the grass has just sprung up like I couldn't believe. A few days ago, the grass was short enough that it was easy to walk around. Now, there's not a single piece of bare ground anywhere. Thick, luscious grass is covering the whole of Pridelands, which is, of course, bringing in animals like these buffaloes, which were never scarce to begin with, but now I'm sure there's going to be an abundance of them, as well as impalas and zebras and all the animals that love to eat this luscious grass, and maybe even some of the predators that follow them. It's just nice to have such a morning. Haven't had one of these mornings for a while, where we're out in a bit of drizzle, and we decided just to stick it out. And it seems to be clearing now, which is good. I think a little bit of rain passed us. As you can see, all the buffaloes very active. Some of them started to lie down, but it looks like they're not settled where they are. Maybe they want to head somewhere else. Not sure why they'd want to move. This looks like a pretty good spot if I was a buffalo. There's a mud wallow not so far away, which you can tell from the frogs that you can hear calling. Plenty of grass and even a bit of shelter from the rain if it starts raining heavily again. Speaking of the frogs, we can hear both southern foam-nest frogs and sand frogs calling. Awesome. KD, they certainly will have grasses that they prefer to eat and some that they prefer not to eat. Most of the grass that I can see now growing around here is signal grass, and there's a little bit of buffalo, guinea grass or buffalo grass growing as well. So this is especially the buffalo grass that's growing thickly around here. This is highly nutritious grass. In fact, most of these grasses, when they're in the growing phase, when they're bright and green like this and they're still growing, that's when they're very nutritious. When they start to put lots of seed out and the seeds start to fall and the grass starts to dry, then it becomes very unpalatable and not tasty at all. But generally speaking, they go for the grasses. If you look here, Seb, you see where this russet bush willow joins the ground? There's lots of thick, leafy grasses. Yeah, just over there. So that grass there, at the base of that bush willow, that's buffalo grass. It's thick and leafy. Do you see how much leaf material is there? Katie, that's the kind of stuff the buffaloes are really looking for. That's very nutritious grass, not too much seeds. The grass is putting a lot of energy into growing leaves, and so the leaves are full of the good stuff. Other grasses, like that which is on the side of the road, that's not so good because that's a disturbed area and the grasses don't produce much leaf. They mostly produce lots of seeds. So that's what the buffaloes are after. And at this time of year, buffaloes can afford to be slightly picky. Not that they're ever picky, but in the winter time when there's not much about, the buffaloes will just eat whatever they can because they need to eat a lot. They're big animals, and so they need to eat a lot of food. You'll see them moving from feeding places to water holes throughout the day, back and forth. So they certainly have routes that they take where they know that the feeding is best. And there'll be a number of individuals called pathfinders. I know it's not it's a challenging view because the buffaloes are all starting to move into a bit of thickets. I don't know, there was a bit of a gust of wind that came now. Perhaps there's a bit more rain coming. But the buffaloes will have pathfinders, some of the strong, young-ish males that will lead the herd from place to place, making sure that they take the safest routes. Joe, if this buffalo in the picture right now, if this buffalo, she's a female, if her horn broke off, it would never grow back. It would be incredibly painful. It's filled with blood vessels supplying the bone with nutrients to keep it strong and healthy, and also so that the keratin sheath, that shiny black outer coating, can also stay healthy. If it broke off, it would be very painful. It would bleed a lot, and then it would never grow back. The keratin would eventually grow over the wound and seal it, and it would be fine. In fact, we had a young male buffalo not so long ago who had a huge damage to the horn, but close to where it actually joined with the skull. Now, we haven't seen this individual for a while, so it may have succumbed to its injuries, but it lasted for a very long time, even though a wound like that would have laid any of us as human beings. We would have had to go to the doctor, and we would have had surgery and all sorts of stuff. It would have been very bad for us. But the buffalo just seemed to shrug it off and continue feeding and moving around with the herd. And it didn't look like it was losing condition. When animals are sick or unhealthy, they get very skinny and bony, but it looked healthy, so it might be that it's healed enough now that we can't notice it anymore. But yeah, definitely, once it's broken off, it'll never grow back. Not like antlers on some of the deer species that you get in Europe and in the Americas. Those, when they break off, they grow back every single year. Slightly different growth method. But horns, if you ever hear anyone referring to any of the African antelopes as having antlers, you can politely correct them. No antlers in Africa. Kylie, they do continue growing throughout their lives, so older buffaloes will have a much bigger boss on top of its head, especially the males. So I don't know if there's no males that are easy to view right now. This one's moving away, but there's it looks like a female to me. It could be a very young male, maybe. No, it looks like a female. What do you reckon? It's difficult to tell at this distance, but it could be. Anyway, there's a male coming there, a youngish male, but look how he's got massive horns actually at the back there. So that male coming up over there has got a huge set of horns, and they will continue growing throughout its life. So you'll see the part which will get much larger is the part that's directly on top of its head. Now that's known as the boss, and it will become much thicker and knobbly and just immensely powerful, or how can I say, strong. Ooh, hello. Hey now. It's a bit early for that, isn't it? getting a horn up the bum by this other female. She's not happy about that. So that young male there is not super young. He's not one of the old Duggar boys that we'd refer to, the ones that are very big and strong, but he's obviously old enough to attract the attentions of some of these females. And he has got a very impressive set of horns, so maybe that is working in his favor. It's like many animals, the more impressive you look, the more attractive you will be to potential mates. So they're all looking at us now, putting their noses up to the air, pushing their ears forward, just trying to figure out what we are, because we're being quite quiet. I'm not talking loudly, and the wind is blowing across us, so they might not be able to smell us perfectly. Just trying to make sure that we're nothing dangerous. Well, round 2. So, disappointing attempt. We're actually in this exact same area that on Seb's first drive we saw the giraffes mating. Exactly here. Miss Sunshine, buffaloes can vary in weight. I mean, depending on how much food they've got, the area and all that. But these buffaloes, the females will be anywhere between 400 and 600 kilograms, depending on their age. And if they're pregnant, they'll be a little bit heavier. And the males can weigh up to 800 kilograms, maybe even heavier if they're in a really, really good condition. But I'd say 800 kilograms is a good sort of estimate for a maximum size of a male buffalo, which is pretty heavy. If you consider that, let's say, a zebra is probably weighing about 250 kilograms. So then if you put 3 zebras together makes 1 buffalo. Does that help? Maybe that helps you to visualize how heavy a buffalo is? Sure. Yeah. I'm going to stick with it. A buffalo weighs 3 zebras. So now they seem to be settling. Now I see a few more individuals starting to lie down. So what we're going to do is we're going to move off from these buffaloes and see what else is around.
You're back with us here at andBeyond Phinda, and the puddle that you're busy staring at is in the middle of the road that we are currently driving down, obviously. And we've stopped here because a short while ago, a couple of very small terrapins slid into the water. And, oh, can you hear the warthogs? I'm just going to keep quiet. Just listen for a second. They've now gone quiet, but there were some warthogs sounded like some young piglets that were trying to suckle and not getting their way, or maybe some sub-adult warthogs getting pushed away by an older warthog. Just some gentle squeals. But coming back to the terrapins, so we saw a couple of little terrapins going into this little puddle here, and we're just trying to see if we can't get you a view of them. But they seem to have settled down now along the bottom there, or be moving around beneath the surface, because I can't even see a ripple for the time being. And I've been using my binoculars just to carefully scan to see if I can't catch a glimpse of them. Oh, yeah, Owen's saying he thinks he might be able to see them, but we can't quite tell for sure. Anyway, it was worth a try. These little terrapins in here, no doubt looking for some food. Unfortunately, couldn't get you a view of them though.
Welcome back to Tswalu. We're still with the meerkats. They're still enjoying the early morning sun, heating up their little bodies before becoming active. We've also watched all 5 of the little ones now out, and all 3 of the adults is also present at the moment. So hopefully in the next few minutes they might start feeding, and it's always fun to watch them starting to dig. And it's amazing to you see how quickly they can locate things like woolly chafers and scorpions and even beaked blind snakes just by means of smell, and then dig these out and feed on them. It's also quite interesting to watch the little ones, how they will be focused on the adults and immediately run towards the adults that has food. So quite often the young little meerkats become so used to us around the burrow system that they also think that you're part of their group. We often find that they will come up to your shoe, and one of the ways that they mark you is by anal dragging you. So just like the squirrels that we found yesterday that shares a communal odor, so does the meerkats have a communal odor that they share by anal dragging one another. So often as guides, we are told and taught very early in our career never to become attached to animals. Jerome, to answer your question, they're not rodents. Squirrels that we found yesterday is rodents, but meerkats belong to the group of carnivores, which is closely related to hyenas and civets. Also quite interesting, if we do look at the carnivore order, it's actually divided into two main groups. And the groups are the dog-like carnivores and the cat-like carnivores. Interestingly enough, that quite often when people think of hyenas, which is close relatives of meerkats, that they actually would be more likely to be placed within the dog group. These animals are all placed actually in the cat-like carnivore group. Unlike rodents, they don't have gnawing teeth. They actually have very sharp teeth that's designed to cut through very tough insect shells. And if we think of a shell of an insect, it consists out of a substance that's called chitin, which is as strong as steel of the same thickness. So it's quite amazing to think about how sharp these little teeth is. Yeah, the little ones are starting to move around now. Quite often when we do see meerkats, they start digging. One of the things that they do is they quite often dig out burrows in the early morning, do a little bit of housekeeping. And by doing a little bit of housekeeping, doing a little bit of maintenance, they just keep their tunnels open. At the night time they come back again and they do the same. We find that this behavior is innate, which means that it's basically genetically programmed. And we find quite interestingly with animals that 10% of their behavior is generally innate, while 90% have to be learned. Unlike birds, which is 90% genetically programmed and only 10% that needs to be learned. Good morning, Gary. To answer your question on that, I'll have to go and do a little bit of research and we'll come back to you on that. Good morning, Viola. To just answer your question, if they are still cycling or they're eating solids, they are already eating solids at this age. And hopefully we'll be able to see them very soon that they start foraging. Hopefully the adults will dig out something and we can enjoy these little pups maybe having a little bite. Let's see. Jennifer, good morning and welcome to the show. Unfortunately, I would not be able to answer you that question, but I'll also see if I can find anything on baby teeth. They are incredibly cute, and it's one of my favorite animals to see. And when I heard that I had the opportunity to come and visit the Kalahari again, I think meerkats was the first thing that came up into my mind, and the words was, yes, meerkats. And they're always one of my favorite animals to come and watch, especially because there's always some form of interaction, and possibly also because there's so many almost human-like behaviors that we see in them. Although they're not truly human-like behaviors, it's just us that add those human behaviors to them. So one of the most beautiful experiences, but also one of the most saddening experiences I've ever had was with meerkats. And one morning we arrived at a burrow system and all the adults came rushing towards me. And they took me straight to one of these little meerkat pups. By the time that we found this little meerkat pup, it was convulsing. And then we noticed that it had 2 puncture marks, and immediately we knew that it was most likely a puff adder that has bitten him. So there's absolutely nothing that we can do, as we're not allowed to interfere in their natural interactions with other species. So the next thing that happened was that the adults actually came back to me and they pushed me towards the little one, as if they wanted me to help them. As we could not do anything, we walked away. They came back towards us and then took us to the main den system where all the burrows is. I immediately identified the track of a puff adder that was going into the burrow, and the whole group was next to me trying to mob the snake and by pushing it out of the burrow system and attacking it. It's almost like if they wanted me to help them. It was very sad for me to actually leave that pup. And even the tracker that I was working with at that stage found it quite a sad experience. There's 2 little ones having a little bit of a wrestle there and a hug. Quite often when we look at young animals, they tend to play. And when they play, they do so in a very exaggerated manner so that the adults know that they're not being serious. Play is also incredibly important because it's one of the ways that you learn to strengthen your body, but also to obtain necessary skills that you're going to need as an adult. Yeah, they can be very vocal at times, and it's interesting even to listen to the little ones when they want food, and if there is food available, to the little sounds that they will start producing. It's also interesting to listen to their sounds. It's almost like a whooping bark that they produce when there's predators that sometimes comes close by as well. So one morning we were sitting in a very similar way, enjoying a meerkat sighting, watching the interaction between one another, and the next moment they detected a jackal at the distance. I would estimate that they spotted that jackal at almost 800, 900 meters, and immediately they started alarm calling. They're incredibly focused on alarm calls which are provided by one another. What we also quite often find, as mentioned earlier, is that there will be at least one of the animals that will be taking a break from feeding and sitting up somewhere looking out for potential threats. And one of the bird species which has been viewed by, in the last few days on the program was a fork-tailed drongo. And these fork-tailed drongos in the Kalahari has actually learned to imitate the alarm calls that are produced by meerkats. And they'll watch them very carefully. And I've only seen this behavior maybe 2 or 3 times. And what they do is they wait till they've got a scorpion or a food item with them, and immediately they will produce that alarm call that the meerkats will normally produce. And that meerkat will then drop the food, and the whole group will scatter straight towards a burrow or underneath a bush. Then the drongo will simply just come down and come and steal the food that has been dropped. So drongos are also pretty smart. They know that they can't cry wolf too often, so they need to know precisely how many times they can play this trick or not play this trick on the meerkats before that the meerkats actually smarten up. But in general, they do also warn them at other times of a potential threat coming into the area, such as a jackal or a potential bird of prey. We're most likely going to start moving on very soon if these guys don't become active. But in the meanwhile, we're going to hand you over to Pridelands, where they're experiencing quite a heavy thunder shower, which is leading to potential flooding.
Incredible scenes here at Leopard Dam at Pridelands, as the dam itself has overflowed over the night. We've had a lot of rain, and now it's no longer called Leopard Dam, it's now Leopard Lake. It's probably about twice the size that it normally is. Right up to the dam wall here, you can see that is actually, oh, that's so sad, there's a kingfisher's nest there. I hope it's not underwater. I think we can just see the entrance of the nest. That's so sad. Well, by now those kingfisher chicks would have fledged. I've seen them flying in and out, and there's been a number of individuals, so hopefully they were able to be fledged by now. If not, it's unfortunate that they are underwater. But as you can see there, the dam, that group of tambuti trees is now fully separated from the mainland. And if you look even further back there, there's usually a mud wallow and a sandbank that the buffaloes normally stand on. It's completely gone. Now we've got a small river flowing in to Leopard Dam. So, amazing, incredible scenes. Not often, well, it's the first time I've seen this after having been on Pridelands last season, the late part of last season as well. So that's really exciting. This means that there might be some animals like hippos and even crocodiles that might start to make their way here, because it's now plenty big enough, and this is a deep water hole, so it will stay full of water all the way until next year, which is good. It means that we have more time to establish animal communities in and around this water hole. Things like fish will populate now as herons and other storks arrive, which have eggs attached to them from the feeding. When they clean themselves, the eggs fall in, they hatch, and you've got fish, of course the frogs, and all sorts of other things associated with water. Very exciting times. Right now it's not too much happening. I think it's too fresh. We see lapwings, I mean the normal animals that have always been here, the normal birds. I'm sure over the next few days, especially if the sun comes out and birds are able to fly long distances to check what's changed, we might start to find more things like herons and storks coming to this waterhole. Starlight, there is a small stream which leads into the dam. It's the dam, most of the dams that are on Pridelands, and in fact most of the private game reserves around South Africa are man-made, built on drainage lines, so little streams that flow during the rains. And this one is no different. It's very old. It's 60s, 80 years old, I'm not sure. And yeah, there's a small stream that only flows during heavy torrential downpours locally. As you can see here, this is the stream that's the same stream will be flowing into the dam as is flowing out to keep the water level constant. It's a fair amount of water. We actually noticed this water almost all the way at HQ where we store our car. We noticed the stream flowing there, and so we knew that the dam must be overflowing. But it will only flow with heavy local downpours. It won't flow if there's rain up in the mountains or if there's rain elsewhere, because it's not a very long, it's not a river, it's a short little river. The Motla Betsy River, however, which is just a little bit to our east in Kwenga, apparently that is it's a fairly large river. We've only seen it dry. That is apparently flooding right now, which means that if we took a drive over to Kwenga, to our east, where we've filmed lions before, that's a floodplain that's most likely underwater right now. We might go and check it out, but that'll only be later this afternoon. We're still trying to establish which of our roads are actually still drivable. We've gone through a few areas where this stream that you can see here is actually cutting away at the road, and it's a little bit dangerous. So we have to still assess the situation. But this will be bringing so much important life to the area. We've seen so many bullfrogs as well. So I just wanted to let you guys know there's a few other feeds like Djuma, for example. Djuma is currently not even able to go out and drive because they had hundreds of millimeters of water last night. I mean, that's about 4 to 6 inches of rain that fell just overnight, and it's still raining now. And that's why they can't even go out, because the roads are flooding, there's erosion, the dams are overflowing, there's crazy stuff happening. So we're quite fortunate, and although the sky is very grey right now, we actually think that there might still be more rain coming. So we just thought we'd get out whilst we can, whilst there's a bit of a lull in the stormy weather. It was actually incredible. Last night I was asleep with a fan on. It was really humid. Seb and I were just discussing how hot and humid it was last night. I had 2 fans on to keep air circulating in my room, and it was really loud. I couldn't hear anything outside. And the thunder, a lightning bolt struck. Must have been very close to the house, because it woke me up, and I literally couldn't understand how something could be so loud. It must have really struck over, like right on top of us. And it rained for a few hours, and again this morning. So I don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of days. We did always expect this to be a wet season, with the La Nina event happening. Okay, absolutely. So I was just launching into a little bit of a topic there about La Nina and El Nino. So what tends to happen is the oceans are in an El Nino time, warm water is at the surface. So it's very difficult to explain. But anyway, there's an inversion that happens when now cold water is at the top, not warm water. And it means there's less evaporation happening on the west coast of places, and it blows over to the east coast or something like that. So we on an east coast of a continent are going to expect over this season definitely, and maybe even over next season, much wetter than normal weather. So this is the beginnings of it. We're only in December, and we expect our heaviest rains in February. we've already pretty much experienced a year's worth of rainfall just over the last 2.5 months. So over the next 3 to 4 months, we're going to expect a lot more. The geese, this Egyptian goose, will be loving that. Many more places for it to explore and many places for them to raise the youngsters. Actually, these geese here were originally from the Nile Valley, and they've expanded to find themselves all over the world, and that's particularly due to human interaction. Humans building dams, altering river courses, that kind of stuff have allowed these birds to expand their range massively. And wet years like this will allow them to expand even more. I think we're about to get a bit more rain. Can you feel that, Seb? Got a little bit of a drizzle coming down. It's very light at the moment, but it's usually what precedes a bit of a heavier downfall. So what we'll do is we'll start to make our way over to Ndlovu Dam to see what that looks like.
Have you been watching WildEarth and dreamt of being right there on safari with one of the guides? Well, now you can. WildEarth is offering you a chance to buy a ticket to dream. You or a friend can hop on board a live WildEarth show and join our guide on safari. The ticket is redeemable at any of our locations, anytime in the future. Only a limited number of tickets are available, so don't wait. Get your ticket now and start dreaming. Terms and conditions apply.
My name is Lauren, and I'm currently working in Djuma Private Game Reserve here in South Africa. I love answering your questions during the live safaris. It's my favorite part. It feels like you're on the vehicle with me, and I'm able to teach you exactly what you want to know. If you want to ask a question on WildEarth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, you must go to the live safari page and ask your question below the live feed.
You are cheeky. That was a brave decision. Amber Eyes is... Oh. That is so magic. That was absolutely wonderful. Amber Eyes just gave that cub an enormous hug.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily. WildEarth is launching our brand new Explorer program with an opportunity to win a very special WildEarth expedition. The lucky winner will get a behind-the-scenes WildEarth experience at the magnificent and beyond Ngala Tainted Safari Camp. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend with a chance to sleep out in the unique Ngala treehouse. Become a WildEarth Explorer and stand a chance to win this and many other prizes. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to andBeyond Phinda. Owen and I have been moving through these clearings. There's been quite a couple of herds of impalas and groups of wildebeest. And on the other side of that bush, there is a very, very, very small wildebeest. I would hazard to guess that it's the newest wildebeest on Phinda. There its head sticking out, and Mum. It is absolutely tiny, everybody, and its umbilical cord is still wet, hanging from its belly. Can you see its rump sticking out there? The little grey rump sticking out from behind its mother, or behind another wildebeest cow in the herd. It's blending in amongst all the baby impalas. There we go, Mom's got her head down feeding, and she's lying down too, so hopefully that will invite the calf to lie down as well. Oh, and the impala photo bombs us up. There we go, there's a nice clear view. Look at that little wildebeest. It's trying to lie down. It's all shaky still. It's so small, everybody. Can surely only be a couple of hours old. Like I said, that umbilical cord is still wet and kind of hanging around underneath its belly. And we watched its mother and it, as well as the other couple of wildebeest that are here, moving across the clearing. Understandably, Mom seems quite nervous. Like I said earlier, after the rain, these roads almost get wiped clean, and Owen put it quite put it quite well earlier. He said it's like it's a clean slate in the morning. And we've been seeing a lot of hyena tracks across this clearing. So this poor mother must have had a very tough, very nerve-wracking night, trying to make sure that she didn't get found, or that her and her newborn didn't get found by the hyenas. But she's managed to get away, or keep it away from them for its first night. Or presumably its first night. I don't think we're going to be able to get much closer, everyone. She seems very tense and very nervous. The wind is blowing quite strongly. We've also just found what look like pretty fresh tracks of a cheetah. Now, a cheetah is by itself, looking at the size of the tracks, it looks like it's a female, or at least an adolescent cheetah. And that will definitely be no match for an adult female wildebeest, generally speaking. But that little calf is definitely at risk of getting caught. So that might be another factor that's making them so nervous. This wind that's blowing around so much, blowing smells all over the place. All the antelope here, the wildebeest and the zebra, and the wildebeest and the zebra, the wildebeest and the impala, they've been very, very kind of jittery. Jerome, you're asking if the herd would stand guard while she would be giving birth. Jerome, they might kind of stand around her, and I suppose if a smaller predator did come in, they would go towards it to kind of drive it away. But whether that's the other wildebeest looking out for the well-being of the calf, or the wildebeest looking after their own interests, trying to intimidate the other predator, that would be difficult to say. But that being said, I don't know, even something like a single hyena, I don't really know what they would do. But look at that, the little calf is standing up. I think a cheetah they would probably chase away. Those tracks look quite small. It might be an adolescent. There's been an adolescent female cheetah or at least her tracks were seen in this area quite some time ago. Oh, they're walking towards us. This is so exciting. Get ready, everybody. The calf is going to come out in the open. Mom's trotting. And look how the baby is able to keep up. Shame, did you see the little baby? It got a bit of a fright there and it tensed its legs. Yeah, not really much of a herd. I can only see two females, the calf and then this big bull. But can you see that little umbilical cord, everybody? It's how it's wiggling around still. Okay, maybe not as dry as I had initially thought. So maybe not quite from last night, but definitely at most maybe a day and a half, somewhere around there. It still seems quite wobbly on its feet. Striped Horse, you're asking an interesting question, and it's funny that you asked this question because I've actually just been chatting to Owen about this. You're asking how long a wildebeest is in labour for. In terms of, or how long the birthing process is, in terms of in actual labour, I'm not sure. I haven't done any research on that, but I've watched a wildebeest. I was just saying to Owen now, it's the most bizarre thing. The last 2 years in a row, on Christmas, I've watched a wildebeest being born 2 years ago on Christmas and last year on Christmas. And in terms of the amount of time that we were there watching for, that wildebeest cow was probably about half an hour to 45 minutes from when the hooves of the little calf, or the first little bit of the calf, started coming out until when the calf was actually born. Shame, the calf just walked into a thorn bush there. Did you see that? It got stuck on the thorns. It's one of those balloon thorns. Remember earlier I mentioned the balloon thorn, Ibamba Impala, to catch an impala. Well, the balloon thorn just caught a baby wildebeest. So yeah, probably about half an hour to 45 minutes, the births that I've seen. Striped Horse, that's how long it's taken for the mother to give birth. And actually last year, we timed how long it took from the time the baby hit the ground until the time the baby was actually able to not stand and walk but run with mom. It took 11 minutes and 30 seconds that's how long it took for that little calf to be able to, albeit it wasn't very graceful running, but it was running. The calf was able to keep up with mum. 11 minutes and 30 seconds from the time that it hit the ground after being born. Isn't that incredible? And again, just like those little Impala lambs that we were watching this morning and watching them playing, talking about how long their little legs are, look at how lanky this little wildebeest is and how its belly also almost comes up to the same level as its mother's. Excuse me. Those long legs to give it a bit of an advantage in terms of being able to run and keep away from predators and keep up with the rest of the herd. Shame. I'm looking at mom through my binoculars and her eyes are wide open. Apparently everybody's getting very attached to the little baby wildebeest. One of my favorite things about them, and now that it's looking towards us, oh, and I don't know if you can zoom in on the baby's eyes. These little baby wildebeest, when they're small like this, they've got these very light coloured eyes, like almost like grey eyes. I suppose puppies and lion cubs and cheetah cubs, or at least lion cubs and puppies, they've always got those much lighter eyes. They turn darker with age. Here it comes! Keeping up with mum. Still looking a little shame. It's quite comical to watch it walking. Still quite unsteady on its legs. The other cow's trotting. Let's see what mom does. No, she seems quite relaxed. And it's wonderful that she's turned around, because initially we were keeping our distance from her, not wanting to stress her out. But she seems quite comfortable now. And pretty uncaring of our presence. The fact that she's walking towards us. I don't know if it's my imagination, but her eyes look very wide. It looks like she's almost like bewildered compared to the other female. Her eyes she looks like they don't look as wide open. I've seen lionesses do that as well when they are moving their little cubs around for the first time. They also look quite bewildered. I suppose very stressful for a mother moving a small baby around. They've just invested all of this time, this energy and their bodily resources in terms of keeping that little one alive and carrying them during their pregnancy, and then suddenly to have to move them around in this very dangerous world. I'm going to try and turn us around, everyone, just so we can try and get another view. We're just going to use this junction to turn around. Slim, you're asking how many calves a female wildebeest could have in her lifetime? Well, Slim, if she's able to reproduce from... if I'm not mistaken, I think from probably about like her 3rd year of life. And a wildebeest could potentially live in the wild up to about 14 years if she's very lucky. She could produce a calf every year for... Oh, there they go. And the little baby keeping up with mum. Now, that definitely was not us that caused that. It was a big, strong breeze that just blew through, and that panicked the calf a little bit, or panicked the mother a little bit. We're just going to see what she does and wait for her to move in the direction of the mother. And then we'll see if we can maybe also get another view of that mother and her little one. They're gapping it moving very quickly across the clearing. But so if the mother can reproduce from about 3 years, and I'm just double checking on that to make sure that I don't give you the incorrect information as to when they first are able to produce a calf. But that could be 11 calves in her lifetime, if she's able to live to 14 years. Of course, though, with wildebeest, because of how many different things will potentially prey on them, there's no guarantee that they will live to that age. But she could potentially produce a calf every year from when she becomes mature. That's going to be something I'm going to have to get back to you on, Slim, the exact age at which they're able to start breeding. There we go, the other female, and there's the big male on the right here. Another territorial bull, a different territorial bull to one we saw earlier. no doubt one of the neighbors of that other male that we saw earlier. We're in the kind of the clearing over from the clearing that we were in this morning, where we first saw that first wildebeest. Well, it'll be interesting to know who the father of that little calf is, because of course this pair of wildebeest cows, they could have moved vast distances, and there's no guarantee that this is the male that fathered the little one. Panic off a little bit further.
It's over shady spots because of the door. Good morning, welcome back to Tswalu. We've just lost Phinda to a little technical glitch, most likely the weather that's acting up. At the moment, we've moved away from the meerkats. They started foraging, and we could not keep up with them at that point. We then went to go and investigate on a few alarm calls that we heard over here. It sounded like an animal that was distress calling. And earlier on this morning, we found a large amount of cheetah as well as hyena tracks in the area. And the hyena was actually trailing the cheetah. So we just want to have our eyes open, have a look at all these little shady spots and see if we can possibly locate on something. They're absolutely stunning, and they do really create the beauty of a Kalahari. It's the Koranenberg Mountains, which you're seeing in the distance. We've mentioned them a few times in the earlier parts of the show already. Mountain ranges named after the Korana people that used to be a nomadic group of herders that used to live in this area. And just to quickly recap, those are quartzite mountains, which is a deposit of sandstone that was eventually compacted through pressure and being altered into a much more resilient rock type that hasn't weathered away. And that's why we've got this beautiful mountain landscape. At the moment, we can't find anything in terms of predators. As it's heating up, it's most likely that predators will be resting up. However, cheetah tends to be active for much longer than most other predators and can tolerate quite a considerable amount of heat. So where most predators such as lion, which has only 96% activity, which has a 96% activity in hunting for nighttime, cheetah will actually extend into the daytime hunting. And one of the reasons why cheetah generally will only hunt in the daytime is to avoid interactions with larger and more dangerous predators such as lion and hyena. we're going to continue from here, see if we can find anything else, and hopefully see if there's any interaction with one of our other den sites with either the bat-eared fox or Cape fox. And handing over to Phinda, where they're currently viewing some wildebeest.
Owen and I have caught up again with the wildebeest mother and her little one. They've lain down once again, this time right in the middle of the open clearing. Somewhere where if a predator does try to approach that little calf, Mom is going to have a much better chance of noticing the predator before it can get close enough to launch an attack. Where they were earlier, close to those Impala, was pretty open, but pretty close to some thickets that kind of border the clearing. So maybe a little bit too risky in her mind, not being able to see what's coming from those thickets. But now that they've settled, shame that little calf being so little is gonna need quite a bit of rest. Charles, you're asking if the father will stick around. Charles, he won't play any active role in the raising of this calf. That's why I was saying I'm not even sure if this bull is the father of this calf. While wildebeest bulls are quite territorial, and they stay. Look, he's lying down. The bull's lying down. While wildebeest bulls are territorial and they stay within their territory, the females kind of move around to wherever the best food and water is. And so she could have mated with a bull many territories distant to this territory. And it just happens to be that this is where the best food is and the best place is for her to give birth. And the best food for her to then keep herself well fed to nurse her little one. And yeah, so this is possibly not the father. But yeah, he's obviously not showing any signs of aggression towards the little one. Quite different to predators like lions or leopards, where a male will kill offspring that aren't his if he gets a chance. And so, just to get back to your question, we managed to find. Sorry, we got cut off on the previous little segment there, with a bit of unstable signal. Apparently, 2 years. About 2 years is when a wildebeest cow becomes mature. And so, if she lives to 14 years, which is quite a long time if you think about it, for a wildebeest, for a species that is so widely hunted by predators as a wildebeest. I mean, lions, hyenas, even coalitions of male cheetah will all hunt wildebeest. I suppose even a leopard will hunt a wildebeest if it gets a chance, especially a younger one. To live to 14 years would be a massive feat. And so if she produces a calf every year from 2 years until 14, that's 12 calves in her life. Looks like the other cow has joined up there with the mother and her little one. I don't know if you can hear the wind blowing through the microphone. The wind is really howling now from the southeast. Quite pleasant after the days of heat that we've been having the last couple of days. I've been speaking about that quite a bit. And see how also I spoke about how this is now, with it being in the middle of the clearing, this is the area that is deemed by these wildebeest that rely on their speed as a defense mechanism to escape danger. It's been deemed the safe spot for them to rest. See the Impala off to their right, they're also lying down, starting to rest. And also in the middle of the clearing, all facing in different directions to keep their awareness up. And that's the direction that the tracks of the single cheetah have gone in. So they look like they've gone across the road that we're parked on, and they've headed past where or head in the direction of where that mother wildebeest and her little one are. But that cheetah could have moved quite a bit of a distance already. And this clearing continues down towards those trees and then kind of bends around those trees and continues even further south. And I think with this little wildebeest resting, and all of the wildebeest lying down, taking it easy, I don't know if we're going to get the same view as what we had earlier. That was super special, getting to see that little calf come walking past the vehicle like that, next to Mum. So we might leave them in just a bit to go see if we can't see where the tracks of that cheetah go. Miss Sunshine, you're asking if the wildebeest will ever get sick. Miss Sunshine, yes, there are diseases that the wild animals out here can get. Because of natural selection, though, animals have got a pretty good immune system, generally speaking. And normally minor diseases that might be quite detrimental to us won't really affect them, or similar types of diseases won't be as detrimental to them. And they might not even show signs of being sick, because of course an animal that shows any weakness. This wildebeest has just seen something. Sorry everybody. Look at how she suddenly stood bolt upright and is staring into the bushes. Okay, well now she's looking back at us, so obviously whatever it was wasn't too concerning. But yeah, so they do get sick. There's a couple of diseases they can get. Most of them, though, the more minor ones, they won't even show symptoms, and they won't show that they're feeling sick. Because if an animal walks around looking like it's sick, moping around, like if we get sick, you don't feel so well, you got a headache, you lie down, you don't walk around as fast as you normally would, you sit down a lot more, lie down a lot more. That kind of behavior showing weakness is very dangerous out here, because a predator will pick it up just like that. We spoke earlier about how those Impala will start to show their fitness to a predator that's hunting them, to convince the predator that they are not a good target. Showing any sign of weakness is a very good way of convincing a predator that you are a good target. So they won't show normally, unless they're very sick. So maybe quite a severe disease. One of the more famous ones was rinderpest that came down through Africa and then wiped out thousands and thousands of animals, of hoofed animals across Africa. That obviously took a big toll on wildlife. Things like, you always get told you've got to be very careful if you're driving around and you find a carcass that looks a bit suspicious. There's a dead animal that there's no sign of a predator having killed it, no sign of anything having fed on it, and if it's got like a bit of discharge coming out of it, advisable to call in the conservation team so they can check and make sure that it's not something like anthrax, which could cause an epidemic. Well, could be the start of an epidemic if it's not destroyed. Sure, but let's not talk too much about that. That's all kind of doomsday speak. Let's leave these wildebeest now that they've settled down to rest in the clearing. We're going to go see if we can follow these tracks of this cheetah and see if we can't find it.
Tswalu. We're currently just slowly making our way towards Tswalu Dam. Unfortunately, we had no joy in locating on any predators after that we heard that distress call. Just going to quickly see if there's any animals that are coming in to drink, as it is slowly getting warmer and warmer. It feels almost like we're going to have a slightly warmer day than that we had yesterday. We can already hear the cicadas maybe in the background already. They started very early this morning, which is generally indicative that it's going to be an incredibly warm day. As we were telling about the cicadas yesterday, these are calls that are created by males, and these males have an intention of attracting females. And also, interestingly enough, a lot of males that know that they can't outcompete these stronger, more dominant calling males will actually sit up close by to these stronger calling males and intercept the females, which is making their way over to these males. One of the typical structures that we find around here in the Kalahari is that nest of a sociable weaver. It's one of the largest nests that there is of any bird, and these nests is constructed out of grasses. And what I find particularly interesting about this nest is that it's continuously being renovated by these weavers right throughout the year. And the reason why they do this is that they don't have to start building nests once the rain has arrived. Most species of other birds only will start nesting when there's sufficient rain, because that is the clue or cue that there will be available food to be able to raise those chicks on. These guys can immediately start mating, produce an egg. 14 days later, these little chicks will hatch, and immediately the adults can start feeding them. What I also find quite fascinating about these nest structures is that they have a number of decoy nests inside, which is there specifically for the purpose of distracting predators, such as the Cape cobra that often makes its way into these nests. The second thing that I find quite interesting about the whole nest itself is that it's one large air-conditioned unit. And the winter, it's much warmer than the surrounding air temperature, allowing these little birds to maintain their energy levels much more efficiently, while in the summer, the opposite is true, and they're nice and cool and allow them to conserve energy without losing energy by means of having to cool themselves down due to the excessive heat which the Kalahari can experience. So generally we find that there's a pair of sociable weavers that will nest. And one of the behaviors that I find particularly interesting is that a small number of the population will actually practice what they call egg dumping. It's a form of actually intraspecific brood parasitism, where they will dump their eggs into the nest of another female, and then that female will raise their young. Generally, we find brood parasitism within species such as cuckoo, but there, in that case, they will exploit another species where they will lay or dump the egg in their nest, and then all the parenting will be taking place from another parent, while they can go and exploit another nest or two during that season. We also quite often find that these nests is utilized by pygmy falcons, and these little pygmy falcons will use the empty nest structures or decoy nest Occasionally they'll grab another little sociable weaver, but their presence is actually far more valuable for the sociable weavers who won't drive them off, because they protect them against potential threats coming towards the nest. Good morning, Sasha, and welcome. To answer your question, there's on times anywhere between 100 and 500 pairs, depending on the size of the nest structure itself. So sociable weavers is also one of the species which is quite unique to the Kalahari and the arid western half of South Africa. Good morning, Rocky Balboa. To answer that question, sometimes several decades to create a structure of that size. What we also quite often notice is that these nests will sometimes become so big that they will eventually collapse. And that's one of the reasons why we actually find them within rainfall areas between 100 and 400 millimeters of rain per annum. The other reason why we also find them within these areas, their favorite grass, which they like to use for the building of these nests, is known as bushman grass. And it also occurs within areas between 100 and 400 millimeters of rain. Quite often these nests also catch fire, and which is also detrimental to the tree which they are supported on. This can also potentially obviously mean the end of a colony. Also, excessive high amounts of rain can mean the end of a colony as well. As you can see, that part of this nest has already collapsed. Recent studies has also shown that the camel fawn on which they quite often build their nest also benefits from the presence of sociable weavers. And they find that there's up to 4 times more nutrients directly underneath a tree due to the feces that these birds produce. And their waste, and which gets recycled as nutrients and minerals that is reabsorbed by the tree. We're just going to spend a little bit more time with these sociable weavers, see what they're up to, from there on move on. And in the meanwhile, we're going to hand you over to Mike and Pridelands.
All right, so just driving along now, thought to myself, there must be a lot of interesting life around after heavy rains, and we found this little guy. I don't know if you can see it easily. I know Seb has to zoom in quite far and the wind is blowing quite strong. But there's a nymph of what I believe is an elegant grasshopper. And I don't know how well you can see it, but it's got lots of bright colors, dark and light and all sorts of different colors. And that is a wonderful way of not only camouflaging itself in this bright green environment that it lives in. You can see the contrast. It would work really well between the bright green grasses and the dark soil. But also, because it's bright colors, it's a warning to any potential predators to say, I am toxic. Do not try and eat me because you will be in danger of becoming sick. Now, I'm sure there are some animals that can eat these, like African civets are well known to eat all sorts of toxic things, including millipedes, without getting too sick. So maybe they can eat these, but most other predators would stay away from them. And this is a very small one. So this is called a nymph. It hasn't got wings. It's very small in size. I'll show you a slightly larger one. I don't know if you'll be able to see it from where you are, Seb. Let me just move some of these. There's so many here. It's because some of these plants are actually milkweeds and toxic plants. But I don't know if you can see this one just over here, Seb. See where my pinky finger is pointing? It's very difficult to see, but this is a slightly larger elegant grasshopper. So this elegant grasshopper here is a little bit larger. It also doesn't have wings yet, so it's still also technically a nymph, but it's much larger. But you can see the bright colors remain. And now there was probably a whole bunch of eggs that were laid around here, and now they're feeding on some of the grasses and plants in this area. That's a very, very awesome grasshopper. Not really too mobile and jumpy like some of the others, because it's got a very large body. But there are loads of them around here. There's another one that might actually be quite nice for you to see, just sitting on this plant over here. Just over there. So they seem to be sitting on a lot of the fragrant plants, because a lot of these fragrant plants have milky sap or latex, which can be quite toxic. And that's how a lot of insects actually get their toxicity in their bodies, by eating in their nymph or larval stage toxic plants. So that's really, really awesome. And now as we drive along, there's going to be an abundance of small animal and plant life. Not only these grasshoppers, but all sorts of other insects that'll come out, as well as flowers too. So it'll be super easy and interesting to see. I can't wait to explore and discover what else might be around. Now I wonder if these grasshoppers... Oh, they don't want to stick around. I've managed to get one in my hand, but then it jumped away from me. I wonder if they have another type of a chemical defense. Many different insects can actually spray their acid or some sort of defense substance. And if I can find one, I'd like to show you something called a two-spot ground beetle. And now that one sprays something that smells just like vinegar. And in fact, I had one on my shoulder the other day. I think I left my shirt on the ground. As I put it on my shoulder, and it sprayed this vinegary substance. And although it jumped away from me, or it moved away, I didn't see it. As I put my face towards my arm, my eyes started to water, and my nose was burning. And so you can imagine, if you're a predator that went to bite that little thing, how much it would be uncomfortable if you got that. It's like pepper spray in your face. Really, really horrible stuff. As you can see here, it's a lot of grass, very green, very luscious. I can't wait to find out what else is around. I'm trying to see if there's any other little plants that I can show you. Since I'm down here, it's not often that I get to get off the vehicle, so I'm super excited that we're now able to, so we can get down to all the nitty-gritty stuff. But for now it looks quiet, so what I'm going to do, maybe get... Oh,
Miss Sunshine.
Miss Sunshine?
Would like to know if some people eat those grasshoppers.
Miss Sunshine, I can almost guarantee that no one eats these grasshoppers because they are brightly colored. That is the aposematic coloration I talked about, which means that it's a warning that it's toxic. However, I did recently see a person in the area who was collecting grasshoppers. Now, not brightly colored ones, plain green and brown grasshoppers, and collecting them and putting them into a little Tupperware to take home. And I asked them, because I'd never seen it before, what are you doing with these things? I thought maybe he was feeding something. And he said, no, I'm taking it home to eat because it's a good, healthy protein, and there's no like fats and things in it. So this person has obviously found a way to cook and eat these local grasshoppers, the non-toxic ones. It's very nutritious, and that's the fact. They are actually very nutritious. In fact, there are lots of initiatives happening all over the world because food production takes away all this, right? So you can imagine if this was all cut down for grain or soya or something like that. So people can actually just have it natural like this, have locusts growing there, and then like collect them in somewhere or other, and then that's a very healthy protein. So they actually turn them into bars and all sorts of things. It's actually really cool. Anyway, I'm going to look for more cool, interesting stuff, and you guys can check what else is going on.
Welcome back to Tswalu. At the moment, we're sitting at Tswalu Dam, and we've got a view on three South African shell ducks. These birds are endemic to southern Africa, and especially only encountered in the western half of South Africa, which is a much more arid part of South and Southern Africa. So what we do find is that they often associate with aardvark burrows as nesting sites. Unlike many of the other duck species, such as Egyptian geese that we mentioned earlier in the show, that potentially uses trees or rocky cliff faces where they will nest. So we have a female that's just leading to the front. She's the one with quite an amount of white, although that white is generally variable in amount, and probably the most white I've seen in the face of a South African shelduck. And there we've got the male with an all-grey head. So generally they are monogamous, which means that they mate for a continuous period. But it seems if she's also got another boyfriend that's quite interested. Now at a second glance, it does look like a much younger bird, and it can possibly be the chick from a few months ago that was raised by a group of shelducks that was in this area and filmed at this dam. So there's a number of different water birds that we can find at Tswalu. Egyptian geese is quite common. In recent years, we've also seen that Hadida ibis is being more frequently encountered in wetter years in the Western Kalahari, where they generally prefer much moister, wetter environments. We often have a little grebe that associates with this water body, and also quite often we find quite rare things coming through here. One of the birds that we recently found was a species of crake that was probably blown off course and was hopefully just looking for a little bit of water where he could actually set up a little place for him to live at that moment. Sometimes we also have herons that come and visit these ponds, such as grey heron. In general, most of the birds that we find in arid environments is actually water independent, and they can fly big distances to and from water when they do need it. Some species don't need to collect water at all, and they simply get enough moisture out of the food that they feed, especially those that eat insects. On the opposite hand, birds that eat on seeds, they do often, such as doves, do often need to consume quite large amounts of water to be able to digest those seeds. We're just going to sit and watch this little dam a little bit longer. It seems that there's a number of Namakwa sandgrass also making their way in. But in the meanwhile, we're going to hand you over to the guides in Phinda, who is currently viewing a cheetah.
Welcome back to andBeyond Phinda. For those of you that have been watching the show this morning, I said earlier we were going to go try and follow the tracks of a cheetah. Now, we didn't even get a chance to follow those tracks. Another vehicle called us on the radio to say that they had found a mother cheetah and her little cub. And have a look under that marula tree there, lying in the long grass. Can you see the mother cheetah with her head craned up? And then if you look very carefully, just beneath her chin there's a big patch of fluff. That is the shock of white mane on the back of her little cub. And they're lying here in an open clearing, having a bit of a rest. Just like those wildebeest, like that mother wildebeest was doing with her little one. There's the cub's head, look at that, oh my word. It's so cute. Look at how cute that little thing is. It's so small. Its head is literally like a quarter of the size of its mother's head. It's so small. Shame, and the wind is absolutely howling, and I think that bit of extra strong gust there just got the cub's attention and it lifted its head. Mum looking like she's just trying to get comfortable there. Like I was saying, just like that wildebeest mother, this mother cheetah has also brought her little one into the middle of the open, where she'll have the best chance of detecting danger early to make sure she can get her little one away from danger. Of course, the trade-off is that they're pretty exposed here. It's probably going to see how it's lying downwind of mom. It's almost lying with mom's head and shoulders and neck kind of shielding it from the wind, so it should be well protected there. And it's copying mom. Look how it's also lying with its head kind of crooked up like that. A shame. And mom looks like she's really tired. Her head looks like it's sinking slowly to the ground. But of course she'll want to be lying like that with her neck up like that to try and keep as aware as possible, so that if she does smell something strange or hear a noise and she needs to open her eyes and scan around, she doesn't have to waste time and make lots of movements to open her eyes and look around. If she's lying flat down and suddenly she hears a branch break behind her, if her head's flat down, she's going to have to kind of lift her head and turn around and look around. That's quite a burst of movement that might draw the attention of something nearby. But if her head is up already, all she's got to do is open her eyes and just maybe move her head around a little bit. So it's a much less movement, much less conspicuous, and much quicker. Oh, and it's so good to see this little cub. Those of you that have been watching for the last couple of weeks, you might be familiar with this mother and her tiny little cub, and you'll know their pretty sad story of what's been happening over the last couple of months. So when this mother cheetah was found well, for the first time that we realized that she'd given birth, she had five little cubs. And for a while, it was the 5 cubs that we were able to see, and then something happened, and one morning she only had 3, and then quite recently, only about a week ago, she was seen with her 3 cubs, not far from here. They all had full tummies. Mom had killed something and they'd all eaten well. And then unfortunately the next morning when vehicles came to look for her, there were lion tracks and leopard tracks and hyenas. So all 3 of the predators that she would be wanting to avoid. And their tracks were all over the spot where her and her cubs had been sleeping. And it was only her and her one little one that were left. And she called and called and called for days afterwards, trying to find her missing 2 little ones, but unfortunately to no avail. And I think it's been so long now that the chances of those cubs, I'm very sorry, this is very sad, everybody, but the chances of those 2 cubs having survived is, it's not good. But she is a first-time mother, like I said, and I suppose that is to be expected. What a wonderful surprise, though. I was not at all expecting for us to get to see this mother cheetah this morning. It's been quite a few days since she's last been seen, and we thought that she'd maybe moved out of this area. And so Owen and I are definitely going to spend a bit of time here with this mother and her little one to see if they maybe get up and start to move.
Well, Damon is very lucky, but I also feel equally privileged to be able to finally find my very first African bullfrog. I've learnt about them, and I might have seen them in the distance once or twice before. This is the first time I've ever seen one right next to the vehicle out in the open. And there are lots of them here. There are maybe 10 of them in this little waterhole. This one is a male, I believe, very large adult male. And there are many others in this waterhole. You can see all the ripples happening as the frogs move about and chase each other. There's one just popping up right over there. You can see his back. He's moving along. So they live... Oh, where is he going? Is he going to attack this other one? Oh, there's another one. Oh, they're attacking each other. That's interesting. So we know that these frogs are very aggressive and they will chase each other and they will eat each other as well. They are cannibalistic, or they can be cannibalistic, and they're ferocious. They defend their youngsters and their little ponds aggressively. This one might actually be looking to mate, though. Males and females look quite similar. Males have a yellow throat, whereas females have... Oh, he's calling. Oh, that's so awesome. I don't know if you heard that. He even sounds like he's trying to start a fight. He goes, what, what, what? So it looks like maybe a male on top of a female. Males are much larger. Males can be over 18 centimeters long. The females only around about 10 centimeters. They've got a huge mouth. So they literally just open their mouth and they just grab anything. And what they do is they live in these shallow, muddy ponds during the wet season now, lay their eggs, and when the eggs hatch, the males will stick around, or a few males will stick around, using their big, strong body to defend the tadpoles and also to keep the channels open. If the water starts getting less and little tadpoles are stuck in smaller pools, they'll actually dig a channel. Oh, wow, I can hear him calling. You can see his neck distending as he calls. I'm not sure if you can hear it. It's very low. That's incredible. So it's very low sound, and now what will happen is there was termites this morning erupting all over, and so the bullfrogs were out eating all the termites. Then they go back to the water where they're safer. Wow, its whole body has to change shape to push out that deep, low sound that actually travels a fair distance. And now there are a number of males calling in this water now to attract the attentions of any females. It's a short-lived mating season, and once all the tadpoles start hatching, once they hatch and once they turn into young adults, they'll disperse and then find their own little mud pans where they can bury themselves. So these frogs are buried. They bury themselves in the clay at the bottom of these little water holes. So it looks dry and hard and crusty, and it looks like nothing could live there. But under the surface, it's moist and wet, and as long as the frogs can breathe, they can live through the dry seasons, sometimes for multiple seasons. There is a young one as well that I'd like to show you, a bit younger than the rest. I don't know if you'll be able to see it now. It hasn't moved at all. Just over here, closer to where we are in the water, is a juvenile, or at least a younger one. You can tell that it's younger because it's actually got a bright green stripe going straight through the middle of its head between its eyes. It's a bit difficult to focus with this weird light that we have, but there you can see this one here. It doesn't come out so easily with this dull light, but that stripe, it looked a bit greener when I looked at my binoculars, but now it doesn't look much green at all. But the young ones usually have a bright green stripe in the middle of their head. This one does seem smaller though. It could be a female. Incredibly big eyes on top of its head so it can look about. Remember, any insect that lands anywhere near this water is going to get snapped up real quick. Oh, these two other frogs are still calling a lot. This is really, really cool, and I'm sure if it starts raining again, these frogs will actually start coming out the water and moving over land to catch the insects that might be moving about. And it's not just insects. They could catch lizards. They could catch small snakes, even rodents. Now, it's the second largest of the frogs. Oh, look at these two. Look at these two fighting. They're having a fight. JC, anything could feed up. These two are having a full-on fight. There's like two males, I think, having a big... Oh, look, biting with their big mouth. So these can be quite aggressive fights. I don't know if they'll go to the death, and they're both a similarly sized frogs, so I don't think that they'll be eaten, but they could certainly hurt each other. Wow, that's amazing. So many things could eat these. These are not toxic in any way. So storks, herons, land-based carnivores could eat them also. Oh, look how they puff their body up to make themselves look larger. Oh! I'm getting so excited. Sorry, I need to calm down. See how big it's puffing up its body to make itself look larger. The one on the left is much paler in color. He seems to have a lot more energy as well. Oh, he's chosen a different target. Big bite. Look at that. He's actually bit him right in the face. That's, I threw him backwards. Okay, this is like a proper wrestling match. I've never seen this before, ever in my life. This is one of the most exciting sightings I've had in a long time. I mean, I can imagine jackals would eat these, hyenas, of course, anything that needed to. This is a high-energy food, and that's why they lay so many eggs, is because very few of them will survive to this size. Oh, wow, he's got his whole head. Oh, he's got his whole head. Man, this is madness. And it's not the only pair that's fighting. There's at least one other pair that are also fighting. So remember, if I could grab one of these with my hand, it's bigger than the palm of my hand. I tried earlier to get off the vehicle to see if I could get closer to one, but they're very, very quick to dive under the water, and then very difficult to try and get them. And I wouldn't want to disturb them anyway. I don't want to grab one and hold it up because it would be disturbing its behavior. Voter, that's a great question, and I'm not exactly sure, but probably a few 100 grams, I would say, at least a few 100 grams, if not more. Let's see. African bullfrogs are bigger. I know African bullfrogs can weigh kilograms, like maybe 1 or 2 kilograms, and these ones are about half the size of a giant. Giant bullfrogs can weigh 1 or 2 kilograms. African bullfrogs are a bit smaller, maybe weighing half that. So at most, I'd say a kilogram. But I'd have to do a bit of research. I don't have an amphibian book with me. If any of the viewers have that information or know this off the top of their head, that would be great if you could share it with us. But certainly at least a few 100 grams. So let's say at least a pound, maybe 2 pounds for those of you watching from across the pond. Oh, look at that, spinning each other around upside down. This one is holding its leg out. I wonder if it's injured. Doesn't look like it. They've got powerful legs for swimming. Oh, could it be a male and a female? It doesn't seem like it. It doesn't look like the interaction a male and female would have with all the flipping and jumping and biting. So this one is definitely a male because it's got a yellow throat. Females have a cream-colored throat. Males have a yellow or orange throat. No, I think it's 2 males. But it's my first time seeing this, so I could be wrong. And these are all adults, as far as I can tell, the ones that we're watching fighting right now. And they're pretty big. I mean, yeah, I'd say 400 or 500 grams. There'd definitely be a handful, 2 hands cupping this frog. You see how when they have to fight with each other, they actually close their eyes, and the eyes get pulled into their head a little bit in order to protect them from being damaged. Oh, wow. It's like if anyone watched wrestling as a kid, I know I certainly did, I forget what the move is called, but isn't it called like a suplex? Where you grab and you throw over your shoulder. It's what these frogs are constantly doing. These bullfrogs just bite each other and then with their very strong legs flip upside down. Jared, yes, you agree with me. It is called a suplex. Yes. Man, that's so awesome. Very acrobatic. And they're fearless. They will open their mouths and attack anything that comes anywhere close to where their eggs are. I don't know, what do you all think at home? Which frog is winning? The dark frog close to us or the lighter colored frog further away? Who is winning this battle? This wrestling match? I think this yellow one is much... Oh, look at that suplex! Knockout! Absolute KO. So I definitely think the lighter coloured frog seems to be winning. The bigger, slightly bigger bullfrog is winning. I mean, in nature, generally speaking, it's definitely the larger individuals that win, generally speaking. Unless it's in terms of birds and things where often colour comes into play, but you can see the light-coloured bullfrog is much larger. So, I mean, this kind of a fight is all to do with strength. You can see nicely now how this one is turning its body sideways to make itself look larger and more difficult for the other bullfrog to bite. Oh, another one. And then boof, throw him over the shoulder. Wow. I wonder if they could actually fight to the death. Seb, have you ever seen this before?
Never.
First time for you as well? Wow. Oh my goodness. Dwayne the Frog Johnson versus Stone Cold Steve Frogston. Black Swan, that is epic. I'm going to come back to this waterhole frequently, this mud wallow, and I'm going to be looking for Dwayne the Rock Frogson. The Rock Frogson? Goodness gracious me. It was a tongue twister. But I think Dwayne the Frog Johnson is winning. See how it's amazing how they keep turning the body just to defend. Oh. The camouflage is incredible as well. I mean, if they stood still. So just earlier on when I first arrived here, I said to Seb, I want to get out the car and try and get closer to maybe grab one. And they immediately just swam into the middle of the water and went under. Now, they can't stay underwater forever. They do need to breathe oxygen. But certainly long enough for me not to be able to find them. So in parts of Central Africa, the giant bullfrog is eaten as food because, I mean, a 2-kilogram frog, that's got a lot of meat on it. So in certain parts of Africa, these are harvested a lot. Well, we're not going to go anywhere. I want to watch and see how this fight develops.
Join our Explorers program so we can keep on sharing nature with the world. For a monthly subscription, you will have the opportunity to win fantastic WildEarth expeditions, have access to an animal identification app, receive weekly highlights from our shows, and much more. All the money will go to keeping these live safaris on air, which in turn connects a global population with nature.
My name is James Hendry, and I work here at Djuma Private Game Reserve in the Sabi sands on the western fringes of the Greater Kruger National Park. My favorite part of getting questions from viewers is that we get to have long and varied discussions about all sorts of different aspects of nature. Because our audience comes from all over the world, it's very special to have different perspectives from everywhere. If you want to submit a question on WildEarth, you need to register on our website. Once registered, go to the Live Safari page and submit your question beneath the live feed.
Welcome to my car. This is Wendy, and she's my favorite. She would love to have your name engraved on her so you can be with her every single time she goes on a safari here in Djuma. If you become a WildEarth explorer, you will have the opportunity to buy an engraved tag which we will attach to her. We will make sure to send you a digital picture to show you exactly where you are sitting on her. You will have front row seat in every single sighting.
What makes andBeyond Phinda Private Game Reserve so special is our massive array of habitats. And with that comes, of course, a beautiful diversity of landscapes, but also an incredible biodiversity in terms of plants, bird life and animal life, as well as, of course, our conservation success stories with cheetah, with rhinos, now with pangolins too.
Catch up with the guides daily here on WildEarth.
Welcome back to andBeyond Phinda, where this mother cheetah and her cub have moved ever so slightly, a little bit closer to the big marula tree that they're lying underneath. See how they're now lying in that very thick green grass. Maybe just to try and get a bit more shelter from the wind. And maybe also to get a bit more cover in terms of trying to lay low. Look at how mom is grooming the cub's face. Oh, that little cub is so cute. I cannot get over how cute that little cub is, everybody. It's still so small. Probably somewhere between 3 and 4 months old. Still with lots of white fur all over its back, like I was mentioning earlier. It will help it to camouflage into the long grey grass. And when mom stood up, I had a look at her tummy, and it doesn't look particularly full. It doesn't look like she's desperate, but it's definitely... Do you see the little paw? The cub is lying basically on mom's shoulder, and it's trying to play with her. It's currently got its paw on her head, and I'm imagining that maybe on the other side it's trying to bite her neck, practicing its killing bite that it will one day use if it makes it to adulthood to kill an Impala or to kill an Ngala. So Daniel, you're saying that small cheetah have a cool mohawk or a cute mohawk? They do. It's very, very endearing, that shock of white hair that runs down the back. Because I don't know why I always call it a shock of white hair, but it is. It's such a contrast between their back and the rest of their body. Their tummy still being quite dark, the spots being very close together, and then that very contrasting white mane that goes down their back. And like I was saying, just imagine how if that little cub, if it were in trouble, if mom spotted like a lioness coming towards them from across the plain, she'd get that cub moving, and they'd try to get away from the lioness. The cub would go and hide. It would go and lie in a thick clump of grass and lie very still, and rely on that light-coloured fur on its back to help it to blend into its surroundings. And then mom would try to act as a decoy, try and draw the lioness away from her little one. Of course, mom, being so agile and so fast, she would, if given enough space and time, and if she knew exactly where the lioness was, she'd easily be able to outmaneuver that lioness. But that little cub at this size will definitely not be able to outrun a big predator. Just love those little eyes. I spoke about the Wildebeest's eyes and how cute they are, but look at these little eyes, those dark little eyes, and they still look almost, I don't know if you've ever if any of you have had puppies at home, how when they're small their eyes almost look like milky and hazy. From a distance, looking through the binoculars, this cub's eyes still look like that. Oh, and it's just so cute. Shame. So this poor little thing, obviously having had siblings for the first few months of its life, that's who it would be playing with now. It would be jumping on its siblings and pouncing on them, and they'd be chasing each other around and practicing their killing bites on each other. But now all it's got is mum. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these two, because this cub is still very, very, very vulnerable at this young age. And with this mother cheetah being a first-time mum, she's obviously learning lots of lessons from her first litter already. But maybe, and just maybe, with her only having one cub now, she'll be able to, it'll be a bit easier for her to rear this one cub. Five little ones is a lot. That's a pretty big litter. There's a lot of little mouths to feed, a lot of little bodies to keep an eye on, a lot of little ones to keep safe. And perhaps, with her first litter, maybe with just the one, she'll be able to to be successful raising that little one to adulthood. Still too small. Oh, it's going back towards mom. It might be trying to suckle everybody. Sorry, Owen. Have a look down there. It's gone straight towards her mammary glands. It's busy suckling. It's been a morning of baby animals at andBeyond Phinda this morning. Remember, we started with the baby Impala. We saw them playing and the one suckling, and then that newborn, or close to newborn, Wildebeest, and now this little baby Cheetah. So at this age it will already be feeding on meat, but still in the process of weaning. Still needing mom's milk every now and then. But it will be old enough where milk is not the most, well, it's, definitely eating lots of meat. Like I was saying the other day when we saw them, their tummies were super full. They had definitely gorged themselves on whatever mom had killed. And interesting that we were just saying how big the litter was that she had, and that's something that is quite common with cheetah. They, compared to lions and leopards that have much smaller litters and have fewer mammary glands, funny enough, a cheetah's got more mammary glands or more nipples than a lion or a leopard. This female cheetah, like all female cheetahs, will have 4 pairs on her body. It's quite a lot, and that's and that in itself is a function, of course, for how low in general the survival rate of cheetah cubs is, just because of how vulnerable they are to predators. Her mother, in fact, this mother, Cheetah's mother, she was known for being quite successful. Elijah, you're asking how old cheetah can get. Again, Elijah, it's quite a tough question to answer because of how vulnerable they are to predators, to bigger predators. A cheetah that gets to about 10 years has done pretty well. In fact, I think that this cheetah's mother got to about 10 years old before she was unfortunately killed a little bit earlier this year. So 10 years is a pretty good age for a cheetah. Apparently in captivity they can live to up to 20. But this female is still very young. Like I said, a first-time mother. She's only about 2.5 years old. But I was just going to say that her mother was quite well known for being quite a successful female cheetah. Like I said, she lived to be quite old, to be about 10 years. And in fact, her last litter that she gave birth to before she was killed, she had 6 cubs. 6 cubs, and they, unfortunately, when she was killed, it wasn't too well. Quite sad there. It's been a tough year for cheetah, it seems. There's just been a series of unfortunate events where, in the last couple of months, we've seen lots of cheetah that have met their undoings. But let's not go too much more into that, because this is a lovely sight that we've got here in front of us. Very peaceful sight, very cute sight. This little cheetah suckling from mum. And I'm sure that later, eventually mom will stand up and start to move around to look for food. Glenn, you're asking if this cheetah will join a coalition later on in life if it survives to adulthood. Glenn, that will depend on if it's a male or a female. Like I said, I'm not sure yet if it is. I'm not sure of its gender just yet. If it's a male, typically is only males that form coalitions, and it is possible. It's not the norm. It's normally related males that form coalitions, brothers in the same litter that form a coalition, but not impossible, not unheard of. If he does come across another couple of similarly aged male cheetah that have also just left their mother, there's a chance that he could join up with them. If it's a female, though, just like its mother, it's going to be solitary for the rest of its life, except for when it's mating with a male or when it's got cubs of its own. And any cheetah cub is very exciting, But if it is a female and she does make it to adulthood, that'll be very, very, very good. We need every female cheetah we can get to ensure that the species continues to thrive here at andBeyond Phinda, and that our conservation can keep going. So I was just going to say that Mother Cheetah was starting to look a little bit more restless, or a little bit more restless than she was when you first saw her. She moved around, she's rolled over a couple of times, and I'm sure that with her tummy looking like that a little bit later on in the day, she might start to move around and go and start to hunt. I've spoken about it a couple of times before, where I've noticed with cheetah, especially females with cubs, they tend to be a little bit less active earlier in the morning. And it's almost as if they are waiting for the day to heat up and for the bigger, more dangerous predators to wind down with their activities, for them to go into the shade and start to rest. Almost like she's waiting for the time of day when she's less likely to encounter any of those other bigger predators before she starts to move off and go and feed. Or go to hunt rather. So I think Owen and I are going to spend some more time here just to see if maybe, just maybe, she does move again, because it'll be super awesome to get to see her and that little one walking along through this short grass here.
So the main event, the main draw card event has finished. The pale, slightly larger bullfrog seems to have been victorious. This is one of the other ones, I believe. I don't think it's the same one, but it's one of the other smaller ones. And they have now moved themselves, so they're all very evenly spaced around the edge of this waterhole. There's another one just over there. And you see this one's even lighter in color and even smaller. I think this is the one we saw the first time that I said had that green stripe on its head. Although I think it's moving from its juvenile from its juvenile colors to its full adult colors. And then there are a number of other individuals. And fights are breaking out sporadically. As they call, they try and entice the females. And the females should be in the center of this waterhole in the grass. And what the females will do is, in response to a male calling, they might be attracted. They'll come to the water and then they'll move towards the male, and then they'll dive under the water. And upon approach, these male frogs will all see her coming and they'll start fighting. Eventually, one individual will become dominant and claim an area, and the female will then surface close by to that frog. So she stays underwater to avoid all the conflict, and she'll surface near the large male bullfrog that is dominant and allow him to mate. And the fights are breaking out sporadically. See, this one here is calling now. And it seems when they call like this, it attracts not only attention from females, but also rival males. And then often there's a small fight that breaks out. And every single fight we see, the system is the same. They approach each other, they puff up their bodies, raise their heads up as high as they can, and then they start biting and throwing each other. There's a couple there having a fight. So they bite each other and they throw each other over their shoulders aggressively. And these fights can often result in death. Not just death, but also injury. And they've got teeth as well. Small, sharp teeth. And they are not afraid to use them to defend each other and themselves. But they're also diligent, so they also have parental care. They look after the tadpoles. They'll dig channels to keep water flowing in and to make sure the tadpoles have enough water to grow to maturity, or at least to a point where they can look after themselves. Oh, attack! Oh, I think this one's going behind the part which we can see by the car. A bit further left. They're in the grass now. And they are. And but one thing the males will also sometimes do is, whilst they are tending the youngsters, there may be hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of tadpoles. They may even eat some of them, because, if they are to defend the group, they need to keep their strength up. So sacrifice a few of the tadpoles to ensure that the bulk of them survive. Man, it's happening all over now. Left and right of the pool, there's wrestling matches happening. You can see all the ripples everywhere as these bullfrogs challenge each other. And it's only going to get worse as this water recedes. The bullfrogs will fight more and more, and you'll find some of the smaller individuals will have to vacate this pond. So doing a bit of research, it seems like there's a certain limit of rainfall that they need in order to become active like this, and it's quite specific. So research suggests that there needs to be at least 65 millimeters of rain that falls over a minimum, or rather a maximum of 2 days. It needs to be that amount of water that falls. Less than that, they won't come out. So it is quite a specific occurrence. And as I said, in all my time in South Africa, I haven't seen this too. I think this might be the second time or maybe the third time I've ever seen an African bullfrog, and never this close and this much in the open. I'm so happy to have witnessed this.
Welcome back to Tswalu. We are currently just enjoying views on the Koranenberg Mountains and a distant dune field that's right in front of us. The temperatures have increased quite dramatically over the last hour, and we can see that it's definitely have influenced animal activity at this moment. Most of the larger animals have all either moved into a shade, or some of the species have now started going underground, especially as the Cape foxes, which we wanted to view, seems to have gone into hiding and using the cooler underground burrow to maintain a more constant body temperature. Can you just focus for us on the dunes?
Yes, sure.
So one of the features that we've pointed out on previous drives is these beautiful red dunes. What I do find particularly amazing about these dunes is that they stretch from north to south for approximately 800 kilometers, and they extend from east to west between 100 and 200 kilometers in distance. So currently the area that we are standing in is known as shrubveld, which is a typical vegetation structure that we find between the dune streets.
This mother cheetah has adjusted her position ever so slightly. The cub is still suckling. Shame, a moment ago, Mom sat up and sat up like dragging the cub with her. It got dragged up off of the ground onto its feet, still attached onto her nipple. Obviously still wanting milk very badly. Again, Mom has been quite restless. She's been shifting around. That's, I suppose, typical behavior though of a cheetah. Super nervous and always looking around. But she's been looking more and more alert in the last couple of minutes. When we got here first, you could see she was pretty content. She just lie there, take it easy and rest. Maybe this cub suckling from her will be what finally makes her decide to get up. When she decides that it's enough suckling, maybe decide to stand up and start walking. She's in a bit of a belt of more open grassland that kind of runs from the southeast to northwest. Tony, you're asking if cheetah are good tree climbers. Tony, certainly not on the same level as a leopard. They don't have that same kind of locking wrist, or they don't have claws that they can stick, that they can their claws can't be protracted. They don't walk with them sheathed. The claws are out permanently, and so they don't have the same sharp claws to grip into the tree and then use them almost like ice picks to climb up the tree. They don't have the same upper body strength or just body strength in general that a leopard does to scale a vertical trunk. But they can certainly jump into the forks of trees and even run along. If there's a tree that's kind of slanting diagonally, they can run up the tree like that. Gain a bit of momentum with a bit of a run up and then run up. But see this marula tree here next to this female cheetah, so if she wanted to, she could definitely hop onto that lower fork, and then maybe if she really wanted to, she could maybe jump into that second fork. From there, getting down would be a bit of a challenge. She'd probably just jump out from up there. And that's definitely something that cheetah do, because with them often spending time in more open areas, and with them having such good eyesight, they often will want to try and gain a bit of elevation to scan, to look off into the distance to see if they can spot prey, spot danger. Oh, and I remember watching a cheetah a couple of months ago. Some of you may remember there was a mother cheetah with 2 male cubs, and we were following them through the open grasslands of the far southwest of the reserve, and she climbed onto a fallen marula, and she was looking in the distance, and it was probably about, I would say 800 meters away that she was looking, maybe even closer to, maybe about 800 meters away. She was looking down into a valley where there was some impala on the hillside, and we said, do you think she can see those impala? They're so far away. And I thought, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see. But she looked in that direction, and you could see as soon as she noticed them, her whole body kind of tensed, and she watched them intently for a while, had a quick scan around herself, make sure there was nothing behind her, and then she jumped down and she went straight to those impala. And then it was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen an animal do. She ran into the herd, chose one impala which ran right while the rest of the herd ran left. She pursued that impala, missed it, and then covered the gap and caught that impala. I've never seen anything like that, the athleticism that cheetah showed. And maybe that's something that this cheetah will do a little bit later when she goes off to go look for some food. But what an amazing morning it's been. It sounds like it's been awesome at Tswalu, at Pridelands, and here at Phinda, of course, as well. We look forward to seeing all of you this afternoon on the Sunset Safari.
This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Greeting everybody, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this afternoon here at Djuma Private Game Reserve, where we're sitting with the elephants in a shade. At least they're in a shade.